Have you ever gone through an event that shocked you so profoundly that it has always lingered in the back of your mind, making you question your reality? Hear the stories of people who have gone through situations in which they believe cannot be explained with critical thinking, leading them to wonder if we live in a simulated world. From a person claiming they've experienced quantum immortality and have died in a different timeline, to one person alleging that they saw how they were going to die in a dream and went through the exact same scenario hours later. Join me on this long read to hear all of this and more. Consider subscribing to the channel if you end up enjoying the video, and checking out our Instagram and Twitter at Book of Alice for updates and such. It helps support the channel. But either way, let's begin. My wife replied to my idea live on stream. Wife has been dead for 2 years. I don't think this is classified as a technology glitch. Technology recorded it, but it was an actual real event, just recorded live on stream. Hello all, I'm a very minor YouTube and Twitch person. Nothing is monetized. I do it as part of my therapy to help with being severely disabled. My wife died in 2018. She was a gamer like me. One of our favorite games was Star Trek Online. After she died, gaming and streaming became my outlet. So 9th January 2021, afternoon UK time, I am doing my normal stream playing STO, blowing stuff up in a mission, and I notice a ship that I like using cannons, and get all excited with the idea of creating one using my Klingon character, voicing that idea, and my wife answers me on stream live. Take a look.
In theory.
One, no, it wasn't in-game audio, checked by an audio engineer, 400 megahertz range. Her voice is definitely coming from inside the room with some sound artifacts. 2, recorded by mic AT2020, not by a game/PC audio, and I heard it through my open back headphones, not noise cancelling. I can hear my room quite clearly. 3, no hi-fi or item in the room that could cause it. 4, in self-isolation for the last 12 months due to, you know what, no one else can have been in my house. 5, if you watch the dog on my lap in the clip, she looks in the direction off to the side that the sound came from. And finally 6, this is not the first time I've seen and I've heard a lot of stuff since my wife's death, but this was one of the first times I've caught it on live stream, and my normal analytical thinking can't just call on audible hallucinations or other things. Also, the voice is as near as we can tell from a sample of my wife's voice, and just the kind of thing that she would comment on. She did like to answer with mhm-ms. Update, I have an iPad, no iPhone, and the iPad was not in the room on that day. I have also tested my iPad with the audio from this, and it doesn't pick it up. It also sounds completely different. Please, let's keep this civil. A friend, apparently coming from the future, gave me an important envelope. It happened on October 23rd, 2015. I have the exact date because I sent an email about this story to my friend that day, and I kept it since then. You'll understand why later. I was playing some game on my computer, and suddenly I saw through the living room's window a blast of light coming from my balcony. At first I thought the transformer outside broke or something, so I got up to see what happened. But by the time I made it to the door, someone rang. I opened it, and on the other side, one of my good old friends from Canada was standing there. Her hair was all messed up. She had bruises all over her face and was wearing a pretty damaged leather jacket. She seemed to panic. She gave me an envelope and told me in a hurry that I must read it and follow the instructions. I didn't have the time to articulate a single word, then she was already running down the stairs. I tried to follow her, but she got out of my sight when she reached the part under the balcony. When I headed the last stairs and turned around, she was already gone. I tried to search for her in a few places that she could hide into, but she was nowhere to be found. I figured she must have climbed the backyard fence. I decided to call her cell phone in case I could hear her ringtone. I heard nothing around, but she did pick up. I told her about what just happened. She thought I was completely crazy. I insist that the joke wasn't nice. I requested a video chat as proof of where she was, which we did, and to my surprise, she was at her current home in Canada, thousands of miles away from me. No bruises, and her hair was all well done. In no way could she have arranged that in a mere 2 minutes that passed while I was searching for her. I was like, okay then, must have been some very weird doppelganger coincidence, and we hang up. I went back to my apartment to see what was inside the envelope. I found a paper on which were taped a USB key and 8 pills wrapped into a plastic film. There was also a note saying, "Hi, it would be too long to explain. Can you send me through the mail? There's 8 doses that need to be taken at fixed times. Thanks." There was also 3 strange drawings at the bottom of the sheet. This was extremely weird because I could recognize my friend's handwriting. I decided to plug the USB into my computer. The only content was a notepad file saying, "Look at this date, dude," which I did and noticed that the date of the creation was the 23rd of October 2025, which corresponds to exactly 10 years in the future from that day. I called back my friend. Now she was the one not liking the joke. I took the picture of everything and sent it to her via email. She recognized immediately her handwriting, and she also said the drawing at the bottom was something she used to draw with her best friend. It was an inside between 2 of them from elementary school that no one knew about. And as requested by the instructions, I sent the package to her in Canada. Later, it happened that her best friend became ill. She had something no one was able to identify or cure. They said it was probably only due to stress and things like that, but she was getting worse and worse. Her best friend was told about this weird story since the beginning, and in despair, she asked to try the pills in case it was sent for her. Either it worked or it was a coincidence, but she took the mystery pills and gradually got better in the following weeks. I don't know if in 2025 we finally have the missing parts of this story, but it creeps me out every time I think about it. Edit the email, screenshots, and pictures. Picture of her screen with the 2 USB stick properties and IDs. I survived a motorcycle accident. I shouldn't have. I used to go to my university on a motorcycle. One day I was late for class and was driving quite fast. Suddenly, a man on a horse cart came from the side and blocked the entire 2-lane road. I was going too fast to be able to slow down and was about to crash right in the middle of the horse and the cart. When I was about 5 meters from the horse cart, I panicked and closed my eyes. When I opened them, I found myself on the side of the road and my bike was stationary. I looked up and the road in front of me was clear. I looked back and the horse cart was still there but 15 meters behind me. I never applied my brakes and had apparently teleported 20 meters away safely on the side of the road. Still can't explain it to this day. PlayStation 2 Glitch. Well, I used to live in Idaho, and I lived in a 2-story home, and my room and my sister's room were both on the 2nd floor. On the 2nd floor, there was also a bathroom and a little living room style area where they kept the TV. In those days, I had a PlayStation 2 and was the only one in my family that knew how to really set it up and connect it to the television. This doesn't really matter, but it adds to the weirdness. One day I was done playing, so I unplugged the cables and stuff from the television, also unplugged and wrapped up my controllers, and went downstairs to eat some food because my mom was cooking, and she was the only other person in the house. When I went back upstairs, everything was plugged in and set up perfectly. It really bugs me to this day. Weird disc swap. So I remember something weird that happened to me when I was younger. I had just come home from my grandparents. I was about 7 or 8 at the time. Once I got home, I ran upstairs to my PS2. I was really hooked on the game Shrek 2, and that was what I was playing before I had left that morning. When I turned my PS2 on, something weird happened that I still don't get now. I was playing a different game than Shrek 2, a game I didn't even own. It was Sly Cooper 2, a completely different game than Shrek. It was a game that I wanted for a long time, so without a question I sat and played for a while. After about an hour or so, my parents told me to go to bed, so I went to take the game out of the PS2. When I opened the disc tray, Sly 2 wasn't sitting there. Instead, it was my game, Shrek, exactly where I left it. I asked my parents about it, and they said that they hadn't bought any games since they got me Shrek. It really didn't occur to me how strange it was at the time, because I was already late for bed and my parents were starting to get mad. I don't know how it happened, but it was a weird glitch. I experienced a moment straight out of the Truman Show. A couple of years ago, I was skiing on Whistler Mountain with my family. I'm a fast skier, so I usually will zip down the mountain and wait for my dad to catch up with my phone in hand in case he needs to reach me. One run, I stopped about halfway down the mountain to wait for him to catch up and received a phone call from my dad. When I picked up, he didn't answer. Instead, I heard what sounded like radio chatter. I couldn't make out what he was saying, except for one thing. We lost him. Wait, he stopped by the tree. Then the line went dead, and my dad came skiing down. Not only was he not on his phone, but his phone was dead. I told my family about this and even had the phone call recorded in my recent phone calls as evidence that I had at least received a call when I claimed I did. What was especially strange is that my younger brother had a memory of the event as well. He said that I had skied to the bottom of the mountain where he was eating lunch and I had received the call in front of him. He also told me the next morning that he had a nightmare, that men in suits were standing around his bed, telling him to forget what he had just seen, and that he/I could never know the truth. He could have easily been messing with me, but he seemed shaken up at the time, and is still fascinated with the events when I bring it up today. When this happened, it completely shattered my worldview on reality. I still find myself questioning what is real. It was a very strange event, and I feel like I was never supposed to experience. It eerily reminds me of the scene in the Truman Show where his car radio was playing security radio chatter of them following him. A glitch at the museum. It was spring of 1999 in New York City. I was spending the morning with my infant and toddler sons at the Museum of Natural History. We were in the lobby. I had the baby and an infant carrier on my chest. My 2.5-year-old son was in the front seat of a double stroller. It was a well-made stroller, but the design was terrible. They don't even make strollers like it now. It was pretty much two full-size strollers, one in front of the other, and it was too long and narrow, unwieldy and hard to manage. I was helping my son get out of the front seat. He was a well-coordinated, agile kid, so our move was I would put the brakes on and then hold his hand as he stood on the stroller bar and jumped to the ground. Easy peasy, we'd been doing it for 2 months. Except this time it went wrong. I was holding his hand with one hand and used the other arm around the baby on my chest. As he jumped, something went wrong with the brakes and the stroller swung out from under him mid-jump. His feet flipped up in the air and he was falling to the ground head first. I wasn't able to get my other hand free in time to catch him. It was paralyzingly terrifying. Everything was in slow motion and it seemed like it got dark and all sound stopped. I watched him hitting head first for the solid stone floor of the lobby of the museum. There was no way to stop it. And then all at once the sound came back and there he was, standing in front of me, safe and sound, feet on the ground. WTF, I was so stunned and shaken and felt like I was going to cry. As I hugged him and held him close, I was looking around to see if anyone had noticed anything strange, but everyone was just doing their own thing. I guess I must have looked startled because he said, "What, mommy?" I was so wigged out, I just could not talk. He is 27 now and doesn't remember any of it, but I really wish I had asked him then what his experience was. He was very verbally precocious and had quite a lot to say at that age. I wonder what his answer would have been. I didn't believe in glitches before that. No possible way that could have happened without a full-on 100% glitch. I work at a popular sandwich shop, and I think I may have made a sandwich for a paranormal entity, time traveler / matrix glitcher. I know a fair amount of these stories are feasible to explain and are a basic coincidence at most, but hear me out. This may be long, but I was thoroughly disturbed last night at work, and it seems like a glitch for me to have even found this subreddit the day after my experience. Let me just say that I am known to be a pretty observant guy. All my friends and family who know me even slightly well are aware that I notice everything. It is pretty hard to slip something past me. Not to say that I'm proud or a cocky asshole or anything, but it's just a little background into me before you get into this long ass story. Thank you. I've worked at this sandwich joint for over 1.5 years. We run a tight-knit crew. I'm a good employee in good standing with the owner and manager, and I am a little bit of a night crew manager myself. The restaurant itself is very slow, as we tend to receive maybe 20 to 30 customers within my entire 6 to 7 hour closing shift. This means that I naturally tend to start conversations with customers. I like to figure out where people work their day jobs, where they went to college, how their lives are, and all that stuff. You could say I get personal, but hey, people like it when you're not just a robotic employee. I even met a dude who went to Berkeley Law School, and he told me a lot about school, life, and all that, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I like to talk to people. It gets me through the days, and generally people are pretty damn nice about it. I even have a little mini arsenal of conversation progressions. Just headed home after a long day's work, huh? Nice. Where do you work at? Oh, that's cool. Did you need a degree for that? Oh, nice. Where do you go to college? Did you like it there? Most conversations are extended versions of that, and it usually gets interesting hearing about such diverse backgrounds. About a week or so ago, this man came in. I would say early 30s, dark hair, dark features, sweatpants, a Nike sweatshirt, and hood up. It was late at night at let's say 9:30ish, and I was ready to close this bad boy up and get home, but had another half hour to kill, so I said screw it, let's start a conversation with this guy. Maybe his dad is like a congressman or something cool. Maybe I'll learn something from him. Holy hell, this guy was creepy as shit. He wouldn't meet my direct eye line. He would talk to me by looking above or between my eyes. He kept his left hand tucked in the back of his pants waistline. I realized that sentence is a bit hard to visualize, but the best visual I can give is like when people took a gun on the back of their pants. It was like he was clutching a gun. He kept his hand there the entire time. He was looking nervous and reluctant, as most people who commit robberies do. And as the sandwich making process progressed, I was becoming more and more sure that I was about to get robbed. He asked for a ham sandwich on white bread. The way we lay the ham is pretty formulaic, but due to his creepy demeanor, I was admittedly feeling nervous. The 8 slices of ham ended up being folded over at different ratios, laid on top of each other sloppily, and did not look too appetizing of a sandwich. The man asked for Swiss cheese. The formula calls for 4 slices, so as I always do, I picked up a stack of the triangularly cut cheese and fanned it all out in such a way where I can grab 4 and throw the rest back into the pile. I lay the cheese in a less than ordinary fashion, and the sandwich is clearly missing its picture perfectness that you see on TV. These details may seem irrelevant, but I just want you to get the gist of it. You'll see why. The man asked if I could toast his sandwich. This means that I would have to turn my back to him for a few seconds to throw it in the toaster. I was running a lot of shit through my mind and was not prepared to turn my back to him. This caused a mini sort of panic, and I grabbed the sandwich and attempted to stand in such a way where I could keep my eye on him with my waist twisted enough to get the sandwich toasted, but still be looking at him. And as you may have guessed, I dropped it. I dropped the sandwich. I made a basic attempt to catch it as it fell, kind of flared my knee up and tried to use my waist as a sort of cushion to hold up my elbow to catch the sandwich. But to no avail. I guess just imagine fumbling with your phone and the weird motions your body makes in an attempt to catch it. Right as you realize you dropped it, you get the idea. I was panicking hardcore, splat. In the few seconds before I looked up, I was bracing myself for a very angry creep staring at me, but he was gone. He had left. He vanished. I didn't even hear the squeak of the door, the footsteps, nothing. I ran outside. I looked left, looked right, looked left again, and no cars were driving by. No cars were even remotely parked close enough for him to be hiding in or behind. He was just gone. The sandwich was still on the ground, fallen face down. One of the triangles of cheese landed in just perfect angular contrast with the tiles of the floor. Of the 8 pieces of ham of the sandwich, 6 were left between the bread and the floor, while 2 pieces flew off and landed adjacent to the cabinets on the top which the toaster is located. Fast forward to last night, a man much older than the first one comes in. I would say 60s, white hair, dark features, probably about 6'6", was probably the tall, dark, and handsome type dude from the 70s or something. Pretty nice man, up until he started ordering his sandwich. Fuck, I just got chills typing that last sentence because I have no idea how to proceed with the story. It just gets more unsettling for me. He ended up asking for white bread. I started to carry on my usual conversation. How's your night going, sir? Just getting off work? The man answered with a stern affirmative and offered no other information. Answers. Okay, clearly this guy didn't want to talk about anything other than a sandwich. Weird. What type of sandwich for you, sir? Ham? Alright, pretty stern guy. No nonsense. Maybe he's like in the mafia or some shady shit and he got nervous when I asked about work. Alright, fine. Let me get your sandwich and you can get out of here, man. He then reaches behind his waist in the exact same fucking way the wrist of the first guy did. I swear to God, the gesture and motion were the exact same. Smoothness, timing, and form. He kept his left hand there the exact same way the other man did about a week ago. The same way. Everything started eerily coming back to me now. It was like the most jolting deja vu moment I had ever had. And honestly, I thought it was just that, deja vu. But wait, there's more. The way I ended up laying the ham looked very, very familiar. The distance between each slice, the way each layer peeled off the stack in ratio to the next, the way the slices folded over. I can honestly swear to you that I was building the same fucking sandwich that I built just a week ago. And I was having one of those moments where a bunch of shit just passes through your mind all at once. And it's actually kind of surprising just how many thoughts you can have in such a short amount of time. But I remember telling myself to take the risk and just reach for the Swiss because I had that feeling. How did he know I wanted Swiss? I was taken aback. He actually wanted Swiss. How in the world do I pass it off as a lucky guess? Well, exactly how you would think. Lucky guess, I uttered as I let out a meager, pathetic little chuckle. The man proceeded to say the most spine-chilling thing I had ever heard. I read stories on Reddit about paranormal or weird shit happening to people. There's actually an Ask Reddit thread about it right now. I always see variations of the quote, chill down my spine, and I had never really felt that experience. I fucking experienced that last night. The man looked at me as if I told him I knew the winning lottery number for the next win. Very inquisitive look, very, very strong sense of passion in his words when he said this. No, seems like you've done this before. He just called out my deja vu. He just confirmed that he was aware of my deja vu. At this point, the phrase time traveler just made its first entrance into my mind. I looked at him with the most ridiculously awestruck impression. I sat there staring at him for a good 5 seconds before I laid the cheese. It was a surreal moment. It was like the climax of this confrontation had already happened, but I still needed to lay the cheese and veggies, roll the sandwich up, and then ring him up in the register. How much creepier is this gonna get? I just didn't get it. I picked up the cheese in the exact same way I always do, fan out the 4 slices and lay them down. I was looking down at the sandwich I had built a week prior. I swear to you, the cheese, the bread, the ham, everything was just uncanny familiar. I credit myself to be a rational dude, so at this point I was just calling it deja vu and trying not to feel disturbed. The man said, just lettuce and mayo, no toast. Phew, no toasted. Thank the good Lord he didn't want it toasted. This fucking deja vu is over, and it's all just a coincidence, right? Well, some of you may not know, but there's this thing called a hot food tax in some places. Therefore, when a sandwich is toasted, there's a button for hot food taxation, and it's something like 12 cents. As a force of habit, I read the order back to the customer in the fashion. Alright, sir, so a ham sandwich not toasted with a bag of chips and 2 cookies. He looked very concerned with why I mentioned it was not toasted. Why did you have to specify that it's not toasted? Then I explained to him what I said above, all about the hot food tax and blah blah blah, force of habit, because if a sandwich is toasted, you repeat the order like, alright, ham sandwich toasted with a chip and drink, or something like that. After explaining that to him, he was just kind of inquisitive about it. Nothing too weird. I didn't want to keep him any longer, so I took his card, swiped it, and could not wait for him to get the fuck out. As he walked out the door, he looked back at me with the creepiest fucking smile you can conceive in your Reddit imagination. He turns around and says what I honestly do not think I will ever forget. Just to let you know, I did not toast the sandwich because of the tax. I'm not that much of a cheap bastard. Okay, the guy's trying to lighten the mood, right? Sweet. Yeah, I know he's not a cheap bastard. I mean, it's 12 cents, but he felt the need to tell me that. Real reason why he didn't get it toasted. He proceeded to say, I just didn't want you to drop it. And just like that, he was gone. Holy shit, I have chills everywhere. This was, without a doubt, the most spine-chilling thing I have ever experienced. I explained the whole thing to my father, and he came up with the idea that these 2 men were probably father and son, and were just fucking with me, and I am making up the rest of the details in my head. Impossible. Do you know why? The man who owns the restaurant I work at owns one other, just one other, half across town. When Guy 1 came in, I was at the store that was about 8 miles away from the store that Guy 2 came in. The realistic chances of these two men knowing each other and tracking me down, finding me across town and fucking with me like this is impossible. I and 3 other employees, the manager of both stores, the morning shift leader, and my counterparts, the co-night shift manager, are the only 4 employees that jump between the 2 stores. The chances of this being a planned and methodically prank is absolutely outrageous. I have no idea what I experienced, but if you actually took the time to read all this, please tell me if this is a legit glitch in the Matrix. I've been seeing the same guy at random for over 20 years, all over creation. This is a topic that has questioned my sanity and haunted me for years and years. I've been seeing the same man since I was in my late teens. I'm 38 years old now. I started seeing him in random places around the age of 17. I live in a heavily populated area and I have lived over the tri-state area. I've seen him in parking lots, I've seen him in stores, I've seen him at events, but the craziest one was I saw him at a destination wedding in St. Martin about 10 years ago. I approached him at that wedding and asked him if he has been following me for years because I've seen him all over the place. As you can imagine, the conversation immediately became one of the awkwardest ones I've ever been a part of. He kind of laughed and shrugged it off, but I could tell he knew he was seeing me all over the place also. There's been spans of over a year to 2 years where I don't see him whatsoever, and it seems like it comes in waves. My life has changed considerably, as you can imagine, since the age of 17. I now have a wife and a child. My most recent sighting of the guy was in a store called Bye Bye Baby. I was buying things for my newborn. Within the same month, I saw him in a Home Depot about 30 miles away. Every time this happens, he pretends like he doesn't see me, but I can tell he's as sketched out as I am. The last sighting of this guy was a couple months ago in the store for baby stuff, and that was the final straw. I'm telling you, if I see this guy again, I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I don't even care what it takes. It's something I've pondered over for so long, and like I said, I question my own sanity. I'm also a male. For frame of reference, the guy that I've been seeing is a lot older than me, but it seems like he hasn't aged a bit, as crazy as that sounds. Like I said, I know the man is real. I've talked to him face to face, but that still doesn't make me question my own sanity. I think I saw a time traveler. So this happened about a week ago, but my memory is still pretty fresh. My boyfriend and I were in a car on the way to get dinner and chatting casually. Everything was normal. As we pulled up to a red light, somebody caught my attention. There was a guy, I'd say between 15 and 18 years old, walking on the sidewalk across the street. I noticed him because he looked like he was straight out of 2004. Baggy jeans, gray beanie, and a black t-shirt over a long-sleeve white shirt. I thought it was funny, figured he was some kind of skater, and pointed it out to my boyfriend, and made some joke about the guy being from the 2000s. We both agreed that he looked out of place, and that's when we started joking that he must be a time traveler. I said something like, he's probably thinking, whoa dude, where am I? And as soon as I said it, the guy started to look around like he was confused. We were in a car and across a busy street from him. No way he heard us. We remarked that it was weird as we watched the guy look around confused for a few moments. Then we both looked away for no more than half a second. I don't remember why, and when we turned back, the guy was gone. At first we laughed and thought it was funny, but the more we looked, the more we realized he had nowhere to go, and he really just completely disappeared. I can't stress this enough, we barely looked away and had nowhere to go that we wouldn't be able to see him. We both freaked out and drove most of the rest of the way in silence while we thought about time travel. We haven't really talked about it since, but we agreed that it was obviously really weird. I experienced the glitch where I saw the quote-unquote simulation that we are in. Someone experienced it with me and saw the same thing. We were all completely sober. Quick preface, I'm currently driving home from my lunch break, so I'm using Zuri to talk. Hopefully this makes sense. So back in the summer, we had a huge friend trip to Lake Powell. For anyone that has been there, you know it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, we were boating through the canyons and going deeper and deeper into the canyons Lake Powell. At one point, I thought in my mind something along the lines of, damn, this place is so beautiful. It almost looks fake, or like it was designed to look this way by something. When I started saying that in my mind, a friend turned around to me and said, dude, it feels like we're in a movie, and we are looking at movie props. It looks so fake. And I turned around and looked and said, dude, what the fuck did you just say? I was thinking the exact same thing. We were both freaking out about it, but then it got a little freakier. We were sitting at the back of the boat, looking at our 10 or so friends, standing up, while the boat was slowly going through the canyons, and as I watched them looking at the scenery, I experienced an altered state of consciousness. The best way to describe it is the facade of the human experience was dropped, and all of a sudden my friends looked like gods or angelic beings experiencing Earth and just enjoying the moment. My friend turned to me and said, "Dude, look at our friends. They're so beautiful and alive. They look like angels." And I knew at that moment we were both experiencing the same thing. The best way to describe what we saw is it looked like we placed ourselves in a video game and we were enjoying what we created. It's super hard to describe this experience. If you've seen The Maze Runner, you know how they make you forget everything before you go into the maze, but yet you have an existence before? It felt like that. That nature of reality teased us and slightly withdrew, and we saw our friends and this earth for what it could truly be for a brief moment in time. I heard a story of a man who experienced something similar, where at random times he would also quote-unquote tap in to this outside reality whilst being sober. He came up with a theory that human consciousness in our brains can act like a needle finding the groove of a vinyl record. Once we tune in specifically and find ourselves in this quote-unquote groove, music can be played. Or in other words, we can start experiencing some fascinating things. I have to find where I read this though, but supposedly it happens randomly to a lot of people. Glitch at my local Walmart involving my girlfriend yesterday. So I know this is gonna sound weird and ridiculous, but the craziest thing happened at Walmart yesterday that kind of freaked me out for a while. So me and my girlfriend went to Walmart pretty frequently. It's cheap and sometimes they have really cool Disney and anime shirts and stuff that we like. It's only 5 minutes from our house. So she told me she was gonna check the women's clothes to see if they have any biker shorts, while I was gonna go to the men's section to see if they had any new anime or Disney shirts. We decided I would just meet back with her since the registers are right in front of the women's clothes, and then we could go. When I was done checking the men's stuff, I see my girlfriend walking towards the food section, and in my head I was wondering why she was going there. So I started following her to catch up to her, and I see her suddenly turn left. So I ran and turned left, and no one was there. It was an empty aisle and I was kind of confused, so I ran some more looking for her, thinking she was fucking with me, and maybe went to the next aisle over, and legit there was nobody near there, and I was confused on where she could have gone. So I decided to just call her up, and I said, "Hey, where are you, and why did you go to the food aisle? I told you I'd meet back up with you in the women's clothes." And she said, "I am in the women's clothes. I've been in the same spots." Immediately I just said, "I just saw you walk there," referring to the section I'm at, and she was really confused. I ran towards the women's section and found her, and told her what happened and what I saw, and she said maybe I mistook someone else for her, but my girlfriend is pretty distinct girl. She's 5'9" and has really long blonde hair and is dicked out completely in Disney. She was definitely weirded out, but kind of just shrugged it off. But honestly, I have no clue what happened. I was only like 7 feet from her when she turned the aisle, and I don't think she would have made it all the way down to the next aisle by the time I turned. And I ran in the entire vicinity looking for her because I thought it was weird. She was legit trying on clothes when I met back up with her at the women's section. Who the fuck did I see? Or what was it? The fact that this happened at Walmart out of all places is weird in itself, but it really did freak me out. Edit. I know people are gonna think, oh, you just saw someone who looked like your girlfriend, but she was wearing something very specific, a Disneyland jersey, which you only get from the park with Disney Crocs. We live in a retirement town near a Riz in the valley, so not many 5'9" blonde girls digged out in Disney here. Plus the girl I saw disappeared basically into thin air, so even if it was the girl who looked like my girlfriend, still was weird AF. I heard a dog speak English once. Anyone else ever hear an animal and understand it? I know it sounds like a load of bullocks, but here's my story. One day I was taking a shower at my flat. Everyone was gone, and it was just me and my roommate's husky. I was in the shower, just casually enjoying the warm water, and the dog started barking a ton. At first I assumed that someone was probably at the door, so I got out and began to put a towel on in case someone was actually at the door. While I was doing so, the dog was barking more and more. But then the barking changed into perfect English, and the dog was yelling these words: "I just want to be let outside. Please let me out." I literally backed away from the bathroom door and exclaimed, WTF. I ran outside the bathroom to see the dog barking, with his paws up on the back door. He turned back and looked at me, and started barking some more. I let him out, and I just sat there, stunned. Has this happened to anyone else? My friend is a vet. When we thought our cat was dying, one of the pieces of advice she gave to us was to talk to him, ask if he was ready to leave us, or if he wanted to keep fighting. He perked up almost immediately after the talk, stayed with us another 5 years before he finally passed. I think he visits sometimes, but that's another story. This is true. My old dog was diagnosed with acute pneumonia at 13. The night after her diagnosis, I lay on the floor beside her, hugged her, and asked her if she's tired. I told her that she could rest if she's tired and that it's okay. She looked so annoyed, LMAO. I knew she wasn't going to leave just yet. It was another story 3 years later, when she was already in a really bad shape. They were all waiting for my school break so I could be there when she's put to sleep, but 3 days before I was to arrive, my brother told her if she's tired and suffering, it's okay to rest, and that I'll understand if she can't wait for me anymore. She looked at him like, are you sure it's okay? And that's when my brother knew it was going to be her last day. Everybody in the family called to say goodbye with the phone by her ear. She was almost 17 and died peacefully, almost right after our phone calls. We've been doing that to our cats and dogs ever since. I called my dad in his past about more than 30 years ago. I recently posted about me disappearing into thin air when I was sleeping, and my family couldn't find me, and when I woke up, they swore up and down that they have searched all over for me but weren't able to find me. This is not an update, but something that just happened yesterday. 3 days ago, I was having a conversation with my father, and he was telling me about his university life. Basically, my dad came from nothing. He had a very difficult upbringing, and went to the worst school and high school in our city. When it was time for him to join university, my grandfather passed away, leaving my dad to take care of the family, as he was the oldest son. He took a wrong major because of the wrong advices of the people, and how he regrets that to this day. The courses were taught in English, which is a second language for us, and how he didn't even know the language. My dad told me that it was the darkest time in his life, and he just wanted to run away and was even thinking of taking his own life. Now, very recently, he got his master's in English literature, and he was telling me that he didn't think it was ever possible for him. My dad just recently finished this degree at an age of 55. The next morning, my dad had to drive to this town because his distant relatives lived there and they were struggling financially. My dad is a very kind soul and he wanted to help them. The town is 3 hours drive away. He usually takes public transports, but he didn't because of recent crisis. He drove there and my mom was worried, so we decided we will keep calling him after every hour to check in. Well, I decided to call him. Now keep in mind, because it's highway network signals, they get very weak. He told me to wait and parked at a nearby restaurant. It was like a checkpoint for trucks. I don't know what came over me, but I started crying and went on to tell him how proud I was of him. I just babbled and kept saying that he shouldn't think he is lacking, because he is not. He was an amazing father and a great person to look up to. You guys, my dad started crying and told me that he will talk to me when he returns. Well, he returned and he just hugged me and was telling me that's how 30 years ago he was visiting the same town, and it was the time when he was at his lowest. He was visiting the same relatives and he was on a bus which stopped at a petrol station. He called his mother, and when he picked up the phone without even dialing, he heard my voice. It was me telling him the exact same thing which I just said yesterday. He said that he didn't even call my grandmother. He just stood there and cried. It gave him the strength to keep on fighting. He said it just now realized it was me whose voice he heard back then. My parents are now taking this as a sign from God, who helped my dad when he thought no one was there for him. 50 years and 5 seconds. Disclaimer, metric system, M equals meters. Yesterday I was swimming at my local lake. I put my stuff near the water and went in. When I looked back, after about 5 to 10 minutes of swimming and diving, I saw that a young couple sat next to my stuff. I kind of felt weird about them. They had this super weird aura. They both were about 20 years old. I remember the towels they sat on, one being red and the other gray. Then I lost my swimming goggles. They fell down to the lake floor. I dived down about 3 meters and came back up, which lasted about 5 to 10 seconds. When I looked at the couple again, because all the time I felt weird about them, they both were really old. They definitely retired. I thought maybe the young couple went home and the elders came to sit there. However, the young couple was nowhere. There were around 10 people in a 50-mile radius, and the towels were the same. At first I thought it was a visual glitch, but after I was walking by, I heard that their voices changed as well. Missing organ. When my husband and I found out I was pregnant with baby number 2, we were surprised but overjoyed. It had taken us a while and a lot of scans to get pregnant with number 1, so not needing the intervention with 2 was relieving. We did, however, decide that number 2 would be our only other child, so I opted for a C-section to get my tubes tied. The pregnancy was normal. I had normal scans, everything went great. At 37 weeks, I went into labor and was taken for my C-section. My beautiful baby girl arrived and the doctor went to tie my tubes. However, there was only one fallopian tube. "When did you have surgery to remove your right fallopian tube?" he asked. "Never," I replied. "Even scans during this pregnancy showed both of my fallopian tubes intact." "Your right fallopian tube was surgically removed. There's a scar tissue and everything from a clear surgical procedure." My doctor was baffled. He searched all over my medical records and could not find a reason for my fallopian tube to be gone. I did not have any surgery between that scan and the C-section, so there's no reason for it to not be there. He insisted it was clearly a past medical procedure due to the nature of the scar tissue, but could not explain when or how. Needless to say, only one tube ended up tied because the other had been removed clearly. To this day, it gives me the chills. I truly have no explanation for it. OMG, this happened to my husband. This past year, he got both liver and kidney transplants. Long story. After the liver procedure, his doctor scolded him about not telling them about previous abdomen surgery, as he had no gallbladder. Nope, that's never happened. He had his appendix out when he was about 10 years old in the 90s, but that's the only surgery he's ever had, that he's aware of at least. Funny thing is that his medical team has just kind of written it off. I suppose it wasn't a huge matter of importance at the time, but now that he's better, I thought someone might get curious. I mean, he's doing okay and getting blood labs bi-weekly, so I guess it's become a if it ain't broken, don't fix it type of thing. LOL. I saw my uncle after he died last Tuesday, and I had just gotten off the closing shift at my job. Me and my brother, who share a room with our uncle, were just kind of chilling the rest of the night, and our uncle had been out the whole day basically, so we didn't know when he was coming home. Finally, I saw him walk inside from the back patio as he closed the sliding door and locked it. I only knew it was him because of the tattoos on him and the white tank top he would always wear. The rest of the night wasn't anything out of the ordinary. My uncle would walk around the room and the house, and I even remember seeing him walk into the kitchen to grab something to eat. Finally, I was getting ready to go to sleep at around 2:30, and I remember looking around the room and seeing my uncle lay in his bed. I also remember looking at my brother on his iPad with max brightness and thinking to myself he should turn the brightness down or he'll bother my uncle. It wasn't until the next morning when I gotten up with a knock at the door, and it was the detectives and my uncle's parole officer. They spoke with my grandma and told her my uncle was in the hospital. I didn't think too much of it because he had just went to the hospital a week prior for stomach issues. An hour later, I got a call from my sister, crying, saying my uncle had been hit by a car and was brain dead. For the rest of the day, I thought that this had to have happened sometime after 3 in the morning. Later that night, we found out that it had happened at around 9:30 while I was at work and before I even got home. I don't really know what to think of it. Every time I replay the night in my head, it's the same thing over and over again. And I know what I saw, and it's just so weird. Guy in the park had my voice and my life story. This happened last night, and I'm just feeling so weird about it. I haven't told anyone, my friends or family, because I feel they'll think I'm crazy, but wanted to see if same thing had ever happened to anyone else. Basically, last night, I was out walking my dog in a park near my townhouse, and it had gotten dark. but there was still a few people out. As I'm about to start walking home, I hear a man and a woman talking. They were a bit older than me, maybe mid-30s, but the reason it catches my attention is because the man sounds exactly like me. It actually sounds like I'm listening to a recording of myself, same voice, even the same laugh. I walk a bit closer with my dog, and it gets really weird. The guy's talking to the other woman about stuff that's straight out of my life, but from his POV. He mentions this trip I took to Iceland a few years back, a small car accident I had recently been in, and even my plans to start my own business, which I am still figuring out and haven't told anyone about. Meanwhile, my dog is acting up and even growling, which is very unlike him. I sat there for a while, hidden, and just trying to make sense of it all, but started feeling really weird and kind of sick, so I took my dog home. I've had some time to think about it, but I just can't make it make sense. I'm still really freaked out. I feel like I stumbled across another version of myself. My old friend doesn't exist, so I've been stewing on this for a couple of weeks now. Recently, I randomly thought of an old friend that I hadn't seen since graduation. We went to different high schools, but had a lot of mutual friends and spent a fair amount of time together. So I went to look him up and couldn't find any trace of him on social media. Odd, but not alarming. I found his dad and sister, but neither of their profiles mentioned anything about him, even on posts about or with other family members. I reached out to a mutual friend who went to his high school and asked if she'd heard anything about him over the years. She had no clue who I was talking about, even after showing her a picture of us three at a concert. She said she didn't recognize him. They graduated in the same class, so I went and found their senior yearbook online to look him up. He's not in it anywhere. He was a varsity athlete, had tons of friends. I had plenty of pictures of him. He was at my high school graduation as a spectator, and no one remembers him but me. It seems like he doesn't even exist to his own family. I don't get how a whole person just seems to have been wiped from existence, and it's freaking me out. Update. At this point, I've reached out to 5 friends who have zero idea who he is. You all have given me a few possibilities that I hadn't thought of, so I'm going to check on those, and went ahead and messaged his sister this morning, and am hoping she replies. Check your DNA. This happened to me back in 2013. My youngest brother had suddenly passed away, and it was pretty recent. This was on a Saturday, about a week after his passing. When he died, his cause of death was ruled a pulmonary thromboembolism. My mom had died of exactly the same cause in 2009, also unexpected death. After my brother's passing, I started to get a strong feeling that maybe these two deaths were somehow related, and their cause of death were not a coincidence. I told this to 1 or 2 people, but neither paid much attention to what I said. So anyway, that Saturday I woke up quite early for me, and for Saturday around 7:30, I was uneasy. Back then I owned an iPhone, and I decided I would get up and stop tossing and turning in bed. I did what I do every day, grabbed my phone to check the time, messages, etc. At the very top of the phone, where the battery level, internet, and mobile service are indicated, and which by the way are still there, as in these indicators do not move, I clearly saw the following message: check your DNA. I was really surprised, to say the least. I touched the part of the screen, blinked, and yes, the message was gone. Oh well, I must have imagined it, I thought. But still, something seemed off. I went to the kitchen and received a WhatsApp from a child friend who I hadn't been in contact with for over 20 years. The message said, "Hi, I just heard about your brother and your mother passing. I'm really sorry for your loss, but I do not think these deaths are a coincidence, and I would like to run some DNA tests on you." I was floored. Could this have been a strange coincidence? A glitch in the Matrix? A hallucination? I've never made this story public until now. Would greatly appreciate any feedback. Cheers. Today my friend left something for me. I'm a bit shocked. I had a very good friend who crafted small jewelry, and I have a few pieces from her. I got a pair of earrings more than 8 years ago and lost one of it after wearing them just a couple of times. I always told her she had to craft a replacement, but unfortunately she got very sick and died of cancer very quickly. She never had the chance to craft anything else. I kept the single earrings in a little box with some other random memories and trinkets. I'm now moving to my own place and checking the memories in this little box. Both earrings are there, and I can't explain when, how, or why. Probably in another universe, my own me lost the unique earring she had. My Penpal wasn't real. A few years ago, I made a Penpal from another state through a website. We talked a lot, very intense and specific letters, for about a year and some months. She told me about her childhood, her high school experience, and what she was going through at the time. Her family, her house, her city, everything. One day she tells me that she was going on vacation and couldn't send letters, so she sends me her Instagram in case of an emergency if I wanted to talk to her. Honestly, I had tried to find her before on social media, but her name and surname were too common. We were very close, and I didn't like talking to pen pals on social media, but one day I wanted to tell her about an accomplishment I made. I go to her user she sent me, but it didn't seem very active. She had no bio, no profile pic, and only one photo. I recognized her face because we sent pictures of each other. I opened the photo and I see it was from 2016, and it had so many comments. Weird she had almost no followers. I thought maybe this isn't her main account anymore, but then I opened the comments. She was dead. Her comments were family members, friends she talked about, and they were all giving condolences and saying how much they missed her. I didn't know what to think, so I try and look up what happened to her. Apparently, someone had murdered her in early 2017, the year we started writing to each other. Thinking it was a bad joke, how could it be? Maybe she made it all up. I keep on writing letters as if nothing happened. I asked her specifically about 2017 though, if it was a good year or not. She tells me a lot of things that happened that year, and that she went out with a creepy guy for a while. I don't write to her anymore after that, and haven't received any letters from her, but it still haunts me, and I still don't understand what the hell happened there. Update. After everyone told me that I was talking to the murderer, I got very freaked out. That never crossed my mind. I did some research and found out that they had two suspects, her boyfriend and stepmother, and they both went to jail in 2018, but they released the stepmother a while after and closed the case saying that the boyfriend did it. He got many years, so he must be in prison still, hopefully. His face and name aren't public, of course, so I couldn't know for sure if he's free, but he probably isn't. Anyway, someone said it could have been a family member or friend not knowing how to cope, and I think that might be the most logical answer. I really felt like I was talking to her all that time though, but it couldn't be that. I should do some more, try to reach out to someone who knew her, but it low-key scares me. Another clarification, the webpage that we met through asks for ID picture and a bunch of other stuff for security measures. It's designed for teenagers and so they don't get catfished. I think I just became the background character for another person's glitch. This technically happened last night, but I was just starting a graveyard shift and I'm only now getting it all down. I work at a gas station chain with only numbers in its name. We're just outside of a large chunk of suburbs, none of that middle of nowhere. Like we aren't exactly near any other business, but we rarely completely see dead hours at a time. It was just past midnight, and with everything going on in the US right now, not a lot of things other than gas stations and bars are open at night anymore, so it was a slower evening. I was the only one in the store, and a car pulled up to one of the two double-sided pumps out front. Pretty standard white four-door. I'm not great with car brands, but it was a little nicer, like upper middle class, and probably only a few years old. A woman gets out and starts walking towards our door like she's in a daze. Legit, this woman looked like she saw a ghost. She wandered up, sort of freezes at the door for a second with a 1,000-yard stare before opening it and coming in. She didn't go looking for anything, didn't start shopping, just sort of stood there, inside for a while, like for ages. Again, bars are still open, so I think maybe she's a little drunk or had a rough night or something. So I give the usual welcome to the gas station and let me know if you need any help finding anything. And she finally notices me and immediately asks me the weirdest damn question I have ever heard at my job. You can see me, right? Yeah, like what else are you supposed to say? She breaks down crying in the middle of the store, and I'm already headed around the corner to see what's up. I have my cell phone out in case I need to call the cops or something for her. I get her to sit down on a nearby pallet of soda and grab her a bottle of water after she catches her breath a little. She tells me I thought I had died. Again, I'm thinking maybe she's on something, but she's a middle-aged woman who looks like a standard local suburban housewife. We're a pretty boring township, without your average junkies like you'd find closer to the cities. So she asks if she can call her husband to pick her up and wait with me. She has her own phone and does so, not really telling him either, just where she's at and if he can come get her. He says he'll call an Uber and be there as soon as possible. We're waiting. So far, nobody else has showed up, so I'm keeping most of my attention on her, and eventually she starts to explain it to me. I was driving home from dinner with my coworkers, and as I'm driving through nearby intersection, I recognized a truck ran a red light and hit me. Now, her car is still at the pump without a scratch on it. She goes on to say she remembers her car being pushed into a pole, going airborne, and then nothing. I tried to calm her down, letting her know that her car was out front and it looks fine, but she insisted that she completely blacked out, woke up in an ambulance for a split second, passed out again, and then woke up again in the driver's seat of her car, at the intersection, waiting for a light to change. Perfectly fine. This whole thing freaked her out so much that she drove to the nearest anything, which was us, just so she could get out of her car. Husband eventually showed up to get her. He asked if I had any idea what happened, and even though she sort of explained it to me, I just shrugged because no, I had no idea what was happening anymore. She reluctantly got into the passenger seat of the car, and he drove them back home. That was hours ago, after which I worked an entire shift at the station, trying to wrap my head around what the absolute hell I had just witnessed. I created my boyfriend in The Sims, years before I met him. When I was a teenager living in Vienna in the small country of Austria, I excessively played The Sims. I created all kinds of families there, with all kinds of crazy stories. Most of them were unrelated to anyone I knew, just straight out of my imagination. As the game got developed to the Sims 4 version, the details got much on point when it came to creating your Sims. I was always very hesitant to create myself or anyone I knew because I would feel bad if anyone died in the game, as they would portray my real life people. I also didn't want to put anything quote-unquote out there, if you know what I mean, like attracting anything bad. With The Sims 4 though, I decided to create myself with a different last name though, matching my Sims husband's name. The husband was of color, as my celeb crush was 50 Cent. I was 17 years old by the way, was wearing a black tank top, camouflage pants, trainers, and a black watch. They lived a happy life together, had kids, and made sure they died peacefully, as I did believe in a tracking situation. I met my boyfriend 2 years ago after I moved to London. We are in a very happy relationship. One day we were at a market and it was really hot there, so I bought a dress so I can change into something more light, and my boyfriend brought some pants in thin material. He asked if I liked them and I turned and it was some camouflage sweatpants. I said yes and we proceeded to go home. We lived a minute away to change. We changed our clothes and my boyfriend asked me if he looked good. I finished dressing up and looked at him to check his clothes, and he was wearing a black tank top, the camouflage sweatpants, trainers, and a black watch I had just bought him as a present some weeks ago. I immediately realized he looked like my husband in The Sims I created years ago. I started laughing and told him, "You look like my Sims." He looked at me confused, and as I told him what I meant, he told me, "Oh, so you are attracted to me in real life," with a cheeky smile, and guess he was right. That was my most glitch moment I've ever had, but I don't regret it at all. Edit, some extra info I forgot to mention here. I also created my husband and many other husbands for my Sims, with the traits of an artist, as I want to have nice pictures in the house of my Sims. My boyfriend is an artist himself, and we have loads of pictures up he drew. If this is really the Matrix, they really paid attention to details. My dog still visits me a year and a half after his death. My family had a big bear-looking chocolate lab named Dupe, who was awesome. He was super chill and would just lay on the floor and cuddle all the time. He passed from liver cancer after a short battle, a year and a half ago. I have no mental health issues at all, and I live a totally normal life. However, I still see him in the corner of my eye in my room. It's always in my peripheral, but it's totally him. I can even see his back rising as he breathes. I'm usually alerted because I can just sense his warmth and presence nearby. The crazy part is, my other dog JJ, who was like a son to Duke, notices the presence of another soul nearby when I do. It's only for a few seconds usually, but it feels so good knowing Duke's soul is still roaming. This actually has me scared. My son is 2.5 months old and only has so many clothes. I watch his clothes every week and I dress him every day, so I know what clothes he has since I see him quite often. A few weeks back, my husband and I picked out some outfits for him from Macy's because we had a gift card. I saw the cutest gray onesie with blue foxes on it and bought it for him for bedtime. Tonight, during our usual bedtime routine, I dressed him in his onesie and laid him down for bed. My husband is playing on his game and I had to run to the bathroom. On the way back to the room, I had some anxiety and wondered if this motherly worry would ever end. When I came back, I saw the exact same outfit on the bed. I can't describe the fear that I felt. It wasn't like a scary movie fear, but I felt sick to my stomach and like something was wrong. My husband said he's always had 2 outfits, but I know for a fact he hasn't. I know every article of clothing he has. I've pulled every tag off of his clothes before I've put them on. I would have known if he had 2 of these. I feel very sick right now, and I feel like I've changed universes without realizing it, and I don't know when. I died last night, but I'm still here. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armory upstairs too. I think nothing of it and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up to the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armory about 6 steps up when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armory and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armory. My neighbor was like, "How do you know about the armory?" I then proceeded to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail, down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall. And I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. I died in late 2015. I was given a second chance. I've never used Reddit before, but a friend of mine was talking to me about the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit, so I decided to share my story here, since I don't have any explanation for it almost 3 years later. Rewind back to September 2015. I was a freshman who had just entered high school 2 weeks prior. Already school was weighing down on me, and I'd been continuing a habit I had of going on walks to clear my mind. On this day, I'd been walking around a pond near my house. There's a trail that goes around the pond, and then the trail leads up to a set of abandoned train tracks on the other side, which sit about 15 feet above the path and pond below. After walking the circle, I was crossing the train tracks when I decided I wanted some ice cream. The fastest way to get to the ice cream shop was to take the path below the train tracks, but there isn't any way to cross the pond without going all the way back around, and being 14 years old, I decided that I could just jump from the tracks onto the path below and keep walking. Looking down from above, it didn't seem to be that far of a jump, so that's what I did. The next thing I remember after that was being half conscious and in an ambulance. Everything was extremely blurry and the paramedics sounded slightly panicked. I wasn't able to move either of my legs, so I think they were both broken. This scene continued on for a few minutes, until we arrived at the hospital and I was wheeled into the emergency room on a stretcher. I only had a few minutes in the emerge before I eventually lost all consciousness, and that was the last thing I saw. After I'd been unconscious for what felt like about an hour, I opened my eyes and I was on the ground. I just hit the ground after jumping, but this time I was fully conscious. I hadn't noticed this before I jumped, but there had been a car parked watching me. I think they thought I was attempting suicide, but it probably looked that way, and the people in it had jumped out and called an ambulance for me. The ambulance ride had been the exact same as it was the first time, and I was put into the same emergency room that I had quote-unquote died in before. The only difference between the two events were that I was fully conscious this time, and my injuries were much minor. I was discharged from the hospital the same night with only stitches in my lip, a slightly fractured jaw, and a mild concussion. For a while after this, I assumed that the first scenario had just been a weirdly coincidental dream that I'd had for a while I was unconscious, so I didn't consider it anything abnormal. It wasn't until a few weeks later when my mom told me that the people who had helped me said that I had been conscious the entire time. I hadn't been knocked out after hitting the ground or anything, so the entire scenario managed to happen in the few seconds it took me to hit the ground, while I was still conscious. Anyways, I'm not very good at describing things, especially with how blurry this day was, now that it was years ago, but I'm 17 now, and I still have no way to explain what happened to me on that day, other than I died, and was given a second chance. I didn't exist for an entire afternoon when I was 16. I stumbled across this subreddit today and I immediately thought of a story that my friends and family still talk about. This happened in 2009 when I was 16 years old. It was the first weekend of summer and nobody was home. When I woke up at around 11 a.m., I grabbed a snack and went down to the basement to watch TV. I had plans to hang out with friends at 3 p.m. that day. Like I said before, I started watching TV at around 11, knowing I had 4 hours before I was supposed to head over to my friend's house. I had only been watching TV for about 30 minutes when my mom came down the stairs, asking me where I'd been all day. I said, "What are you talking about? I've been awake for less than an hour." I look at my watch and see that it's well past 5 in the afternoon. I run upstairs and check my phone to see that I had several missed calls from my friend and my mom. My mom's side of the story is what makes me nauseous when I think about this, even to this day. She was with my little brother at his baseball game from 1 to 3 that day. She and my brother were home when I supposedly woke up and went down to the basement, but neither of them have any memory of even seeing me that morning. When my mom got home at around 3, she checked the entire house for me, including the basement where I had been sitting on the couch watching TV. It's been 10 years and I still have no idea what happened on that day. It is by far the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. And although I talk about it with my family like it's a funny little thing that happened, it genuinely chills me to my bones thinking about it. I think Updo Reddit on YouTube saved my butt today. So I work for a joinery company and I was delivering a load to a construction site about an hour away from work. And whenever I'm out and about, I just play Reddit compilation videos through my headphones. I was about 8 minutes into a video when, in the middle of a town at a red light with a bad feeling of deja vu, the video started buffering. I thought it was odd since I had good reception but was just going to wait it out. The lights went green and the video played just long enough to say the word wait and started buffering again. I couldn't see anything at all. The road was clear, but I thought I'd listen. I looked left, then right again, and there was a massive semi at speed that appeared out of nowhere and ran the red light. It would have taken out the driver's side of the cab, and I'd been toast if I didn't wait. Definitely reminded me of my own mortality. Have you ever experienced a brief state of consciousness where you realized how crazy it is that anything exists? Throughout my life, I've experienced many short moments, usually around sleep/wake, or after deep contemplation, where everything would suddenly look unfamiliar, and it would be accompanied by this intense awe at how anything exists. It's happened a handful of times and only lasts about 5 to 10 seconds. Things feel normal again. I call it a state of consciousness to differentiate it from just thinking about existence that isn't accompanied by this sort of derealization. It literally feels like for a few brief seconds you have bypassed some type of software block that doesn't want you to go beyond and you are quickly pulled back in. It's also a bit scary when you are in that state. Has anyone else ever experienced this? Reply: I have these all the time. The ones that get me the most are the mystery of consciousness and what is actually powering this reality we live in. We are all concurrently experiencing these things, but I'm the only one seeing it from this unique perspective, which is not so unique because everyone else is experiencing it too. When I die, it's hard to me to grasp that the rest of the world will go on existing, while complete blackness will take over for me, and I will cease to be. Similar to the experience of anesthesia, it's very hard to put into words how I feel. I think that reality is God itself. We are a divine being, experiencing itself from multiple different angles. This made my spine shiver. 20 years old male. So to put into perspective, my girlfriend of 2 years, 19 years old female, lost her mother unexpectedly 6 months before her and I met. Her mother and her were very close. They were practically best friends. Now, It's New Year's Eve, and we're headed to her best friend's house for a party. My girlfriend decides to wear one of the last things her mother gave her before she passed away, a pair of gold earrings. At some point throughout the night, she loses an earring. Devastated, we all retrace our every step, and we do manage to find the backing to it, but no earring. It's now 24 hours later. I'm lying in her bed by myself with no clothes on while she's in the shower. I'm reading a book when all of a sudden, the fucking earring gets dropped onto my bare chest out of nowhere. I look around. Nobody else in the room. Nobody else in the house. Just my girlfriend mindlessly showering in the room beside me. My friend and I died in a car crash, then we respawned/reset. I am convinced quantum immortality or parallel dimensions exist to a degree. I think I might have shared this already, but I need to go more into detail with what happened. About 6 to 8 years ago, my friend Giovanni and I left my house to go get some late night McDonald's. You know, just as young fellas do at 2 a.m. after a night of partying, etc. We got into his white Mustang, left the neighborhood, and began driving on one of the main roads towards McDonald's, which was about 2 miles away. As we cross an intersection just about a half a mile away from McDonald's, we get slammed by another car and thrown, and we proceed to roll. All I remember from the impact is that the car was speeding very fast. The impact was brutal. Glass shards flew everywhere and the sound of plastic and metal scraping the asphalt. We died upon impact. We were gone. Then it all just went black. I saw that the car was annihilated, looking at it from above. The scene was distressing. Then just as soon as the scene played out of our deaths, it abruptly ended, and we automatically went back, and we were both standing at the front door, about to leave to McDonald's. I look over at Gio, and Gio is tearing up, shaking with his hands on the doorknob. I say, bro, what the fuck was that? If we leave and go right now, we're going to die in a car crash. All he replied with was something along the lines of, I know. Gio was shaking terribly, and I felt sick to my stomach. We had both just lived our deaths. We both stepped away from the door and walked back into my family room and sat on the couch and didn't say a word to each other and just stared off into the distance. I had lived my own death, and so did he. We both knew it, and we both had no idea how to explain it. The best way I can explain it is, it felt like a dream where it's one of those almost surreal of dreams. We assertedly left the house and almost made it to McDonald's, but we got hit at an intersection, then flashed back almost immediately to my house. If y'all ever seen that episode of Rick and Morty where Morty gets a do-over control, it was exactly like that. It's like we experienced and lived our deaths, then simply had to do over and respawned to 10 to 15 minutes earlier. We were also sober. We're from Utah. We were in high school at the time. No drinking or drugs back then. Partying in the sense of dance parties in Utah, which are a thing here. I found a VHS tape of myself as a child at my in-laws' house. This all started a few weeks ago when my husband decided to go into his parents' attic in the garage to see if any of his old Pokemon cards are worth any money. His mom kept literally every toy he's ever had, so there are dozens of boxes of his things that we've been going through. We found a box that clearly hasn't been opened in a long time. It was taped up and had plastic grocery bags laid on the top from a store that hasn't been around in town since the 90s, and it's full of his family's old VHS home videos. His parents documented so much of his childhood, so every night we've watched a home video after supper with his parents, and it's been really fun. The videos are from the late 80s and early 90s. A few nights ago, my husband put a new tape in the VHS player, and the first thing we see is my cousin's 16th birthday party from 1994, and I am in the video. His parents have no idea how they have this tape, and the weirder thing is, we have no idea who filmed this tape. I've asked all my aunts and uncles, and no one knows what I'm talking about. The video also has me hunting for Easter eggs at my aunt's house, also in 1994. My parents never owned a video camera, so it's not their tape. It doesn't make any sense how my in-laws have this tape. We've been trying to come up with logical explanations for it, but we can't. My in-laws say that the box of tapes hasn't been opened since they put it in the attic when the garage was built in 2002, which is before I even met my husband. I would have only been 11 years old when they built the garage, so it's been up there this entire time. It's not like I somehow brought this tape over and forgot about it. Quantum immortality. Is the glitch the fact that some people remember being reset? I'm really interested in the idea of quantum immortality. Here's an article of John McAfee who uses Russian roulette to freak out reporters. There's thousands of examples on here of people who were sure they should have died but didn't. Some have a vision where the up and coming death is shown and averted, and some describe it as a reset after the event, but in all the cases they are convinced it is real. So I started thinking about how often this might happen and whether it happens without anyone realizing it happened. In this case, the glitch wouldn't be the reset. The glitch would be in fact that someone recognized the reset had occurred. So I started thinking about my life and tried to work out how many times I might have survived unexpectedly, and the number proved to be quite high. I've jotted a few down so you can judge and compare with your own life. I thought there might be others who had some close scrapes with death. 2 car accidents that could have easily been fatal. One was spinning out of control on a motorway, the other being stopped going down a steep drop by a rickety fence post. At least 10 electrocutions by mains electricity, 2 skiing accidents, 1 house fire, a heart attack, and a bypass surgery. The point being that each one of these could have resulted in death, but if I didn't experience the reset glitch, I just think I was lucky. So I just wondered if anyone else could recall close calls that would have resulted in death, but without any apparent reset or preview. I think I saw future me, and she saw me too. This happened yesterday and it still makes me uncomfortable. I was at a train station on my way back from work when I saw a couple. What drew my attention was the fact that they were speaking my language, so I looked at them. The woman was built and looked exactly like me, and I don't have a very common appearance for the country I live in, but about a decade older, and the man was an aged carbon copy of my current boyfriend. But what really set my creepy radar off was the following. She had the tattoo I always wanted to get, exactly where I wanted to get it, and it's very professional design, only my best friend knows about, so not a common tattoo. He was speaking my native language with a very distinct accent of his home country, which is similar but not the same as the way people from my country we live in speak my language. So I looked at them when they were facing the other way, feeling extremely creeped out. It was then that the woman turned around and saw me, freezing instantly as if she had seen a ghost. Then I finally managed to look away and run towards the exit. I really feel like I'm going insane here. It was as if she or I remembered that exact moment and knew exactly when and where to look for me. I didn't tell anyone because I don't want them to think I'm completely nuts. My dad's gut feeling. I was 17 at the time, and me and my dad had just finished our fishing trip, and it was almost midnight, mid-fall. When I was about to get in the car, he told me that he did not want me to sit in the front seat on the ride home. We argued about it for about 5 minutes, and he did not give any good reason to why he did not want me to. I gave up and got in the back seat. It was pitch black outside. When we had been driving on the main road for about 2 minutes, we saw a car driving in our lane. Right as we were about to collide, my dad swerved into the other lane, and so did the car in front of us. I heard my dad say, "I knew it," at the very last second, and then I blacked out. Woke up when police showed up at the scene. They helped me out of the car. I was barely conscious, and I don't remember much after that. Only thing that is still crystal clear in my memory is that I saw my dad sitting in the car waving at me with tears in his eyes. When I later asked where my dad was, I was told that he had flown out of the car window and landed only a few feet from the car and passed away in the ambulance. I was told the man we crashed with died on impact and also had a 17-year-old daughter in the back seat who survived. I still can't believe that this really happened. This was 6 years ago. Wow, have you ever reached out to the 17-year-old daughter from the other car to see if she had any similar stories? As both of you were in the back seat, maybe both of your dads saved your lives that night. Still doesn't explain why he was on the wrong side of the road. I'm very sorry for your loss and that you had to experience that. I wonder what the other girl's side of the story is. A glitch happened just now. My mom and sister left for hockey practice about 30 minutes ago. I'm sitting in my room doing homework, and all of a sudden I hear my sister's voice excited and saying, "Rocky." Rocky is my dog, and every time she walks in, he goes up to her excited, so she always pets him and calls him a good boy, etc. So I immediately think, oh, that's weird that I didn't hear them walk through the door at all, and also did not see them on my Ring camera. I get a notification and can watch replays of people coming through the front door. So I sit there for about 15 seconds and continue to do my homework until I realize, oh shit, wait, why haven't I heard any of them talk or move at all? I went upstairs to check and literally nobody is home and no evidence from the Ring camera yet. I am positive I heard my sister talk. The Ghost Family. About 3 years ago, I worked at a pizzeria where I carried out varied tasks depending on the needs. This evening, I was in charge of deliveries. A couple and their 2 children, who were regular customers, ordered by phone and came to pick up their order at the restaurant. Usually, they opted for delivery, but this wasn't the first time they had to come pick up. As they left, I walked right past them. A few minutes later, we realized that they were missing an item. We tried calling them, but there was no answer. As they were regular customers and I had a delivery nearby their address, I decided to drop off the missing item myself. However, when I arrived at their building, something seemed off. They lived on the ground floor of a small building and their yard was usually filled with children's toys. But that day, it was empty. I rang the intercom, and through the glass door of the building, I saw an elderly woman opening the door of the flat and coming to me. She told me she had lived there for years and there was no family living there. Confused, I went back to my car and video called my colleague to make sure I wasn't going crazy. She became puzzled as I had just been and confirmed that I was at the correct address. This would have been surprising otherwise, as I had delivered to them several times before and was very familiar with the neighborhood. I tried calling the customers again, but still no answer. Eventually, I had to move on, as I was running out of time. About 2 weeks later, they reordered, as if nothing had happened. I made the delivery, and everything seemed back to normal. Of course, I told them about the strange events. They were just as confused as I was and had no explanation, since they of course didn't move and no elderly woman lived with them. Moreover, they were certain that they had gone straight home after picking up their order. Since these events, we referred to them as the Ghost Family. A parallel life / awoken by a lamp. Throwaway account because this is really personal. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note, he was 325 pounds. I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady. She made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years, we got married, and almost immediately, she bore me a daughter. I had a great job, and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was 2, my wife bore me a son. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day, while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D, but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on 4 legs, in a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon, I stopped that too, as I wasn't eating or drinking. I stared at that lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come and try to talk to me. By this time, my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real. The house is not real. My wife, my kids, none of that is real. My last 10 years of my life are not real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective, and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of weird noises, and I became aware of pain. A fucking shit ton of pain. The first words I said were, "I'm missing teeth," and opened my eyes. I was laying on my back on the sidewalk, surrounded by people that I didn't know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point, a cop scooped me up, dragged / walked me across the sidewalk and grass, and threw me face down in the back of a cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive and give me CT scans and shit. I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says. "I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist. I had just recently purchased my house, and my old washer and dryer wouldn't fit, Plus they sucked and my wife hated using them, so she sent me on a mission to buy a new set. I didn't do my research, and as I'm standing in the Lowe's appliance department coming to grips with what I'm up against, my contractor neighbor walked up behind me. He helped me pick out the exact units I was going to purchase. I bought them, and then life got weird for a few minutes. When I got in the truck with my 2 large boxes, there stands my neighbor waiting for me. I thought he was waiting to help me load them, but he just looked at the boxes and said something like, "That's a gas dryer. We don't have gas." I bust his balls for a couple of minutes about helping me pick the wrong units out, and it was as normal an interaction as I could have had. I went inside to the return walk of shame of the items I literally never even left the parking lot with. My neighbor walked to his truck. I'm at the return counter. The girl behind the register asks me my name. I told her and handed her my receipt from 5 minutes prior while explaining the situation. Without even looking up at me, she asks again, "Name?" I tell her my name a second time, and she says nothing while typing into the computer. In comes my neighbor to return desk with a gallon of paint. He waits in line behind me, says nothing. The girl behind the register looks up at me and says, "Name, sir?" I tell her my name for the 3rd time, pointing to the receipts on the counter, and try to explain the situation again. She types into the computer some more, and for what probably a solid minute, says nothing at all. Another girl at the return desk finishes with another customer and comes over to help. The new girl says to me while they both stare into the computer screen, "Name?" A 4th time. I give them both my name. Without taking their eyes off the screen, the new girl says, "I shit you not. I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist." I got sort of lightheaded at first when she said that, because I was already thinking how strange this was. I said back, "I don't exist, or I'm not in your system." Without answering me, the second girl says to my neighbor, "Sir, I can help you over here," and moves to the next register as my neighbor walks past me, without saying a single word to me, returns his paint, and walks out the door. Then, almost as if nothing weird had just happened, the first girl just says my name, and "Here's your return. You'll have to purchase the new ones and we'll refund you for the ones you've mistakenly purchased." Without even going back to the appliances, there behind the counter stands a guy with the units I needed on a dolly, ready to help me buy and load them into my truck. My neighbor was gone, but when I asked him about it, he didn't think there was anything weird about the whole thing. I, on the other hand, had an existential crisis and only barely managed to hold it together. Edit. I understand it's in people's nature to disbelieve me, but it happened exactly like I said. I'm not going to argue in the comments, so take it as you will. If I'm going to fabricate a story, it would have had lasers and explosions, not a trip to Lowe's to buy a washer and dryer. Something is wrong with my girlfriend. Me, male 26, and my girlfriend, female 25, have been living together in an apartment for 2.5 years. Everything has been normal until quarantine started around 4 weeks ago, when I started to notice some odd things. For instance, for the last 3 weeks or so, my girlfriend has been putting sugar in her morning coffee, while throughout our entire relationship, she's always been very much against it. It may seem like a small detail, but she's always been complaining about how I don't know what real coffee is since I put quite a lot of sugar. On the first day when I saw her drinking coffee with sugar, I asked her, why would she do that? And she looked at me, weirded out, and said something like, "What are you talking about? I've always been putting sugar in my coffee." I felt a bit confused for a moment, but then we started talking about some other things, so I didn't think any more about it until the morning after, when she did the exact same thing, and had once again the same reaction. Fast forward a few days, and another odd thing happened. We were having sex, and she suddenly suggested a brand new pose that we had already tried, but it had gone wrong and it hurt her a lot, so we had simply decided not to try it anymore. Naturally, I was very surprised with her suggestion, and reminded her about the time when it went wrong, and she completely dismissed it, saying that I probably mixed her up with some ex-girlfriend, or that I was tripping. We then did the same pose, and we actually enjoyed it. Today, the weirdest thing happened, which is the reason I'm writing this post. In the afternoon, I was working at home. I'm employed as a PhD student at the computer science department of a university. When my girlfriend asked me what's up with a guy who I've never heard of before, I asked her who is she referring to, and she said, "Well, it's that colleague of yours who you always talk about, the one from the company where you're employed at." I froze and asked her to repeat, and she said the exact same thing all over again. Then I told her that I don't work at that company, nor have I worked at any company since I started a PhD straight after my master's degree. At this point, she also froze, and we were just staring at each other, completely confused and shocked for a few moments. She then asked me what the hell is going on, and I reminded her about the coffee thing and about the pose and that I don't know what's going on anymore. At this point, she started crying too and asked me what's wrong with us. Nor she, nor me, nor anyone in both of our families have ever had any mental problems in the past. We don't know what's this about. Can anyone explain what's wrong with us? They dialed the wrong number and called my phone. I was at work in a hospital and had a room with an elderly husband and a wife who both had pneumonia. It's unusual to have both husband and wife admitted at the same time. Later in the shift, I got a call on my cell phone and I didn't recognize the number and let it go to voicemail. Later I listened. It was something like, "Hey Jeffrey, it's your Uncle Bob. Looks like your granny and grampy are sick and both in the hospital. Give me a call back." I thought, okay, that's a bit weird, but whatever. I decided to call the guy back with the hospital phone, just to say that Jeffrey didn't get the message. Uncle Bob answered and was glad I clarified. I then asked him what was the name of Granny and Grampy. It happened to be the same elderly couple. I asked Bob what is Jeffrey's number, and it was 1 digit off from mine. So Bob misdialed Jeffrey's number by 1 digit, calling my cell phone instead, in order to discuss the sickly couple, who I was taking care of at the time. I cannot imagine the odds of that happening. Weirds me out when I think about it. Hopefully, I explained it well enough. People disappearing in a water slide. When I was around 12, I saw something strange happen at a water park. The park had a tower with 2 water slides, a long one and a shorter one. Me and my brother lined up in a queue which was very long. So in order to pass the time, we started guessing what gender a person coming out of the long slide will be. We did that for a while, until people stopped coming out completely. I didn't think that was too weird at the time, but then when I got to the top of the tower, I saw people still going in. I freaked out and told my brother to take the short slide. We did, and we met our parents at the bottom of the slide in the pool. They confirmed that no one had come out for like 10 minutes, even though I saw people going in. The first people started coming out about 5 minutes afterwards. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened to the other people. You aren't the only one. I saved this post about 6 years ago from a personal mysteries thread. I have no idea who wrote it, but your story reminded me a lot of it. It's a bit long, but here goes. Near where I grew up, there was a large amusement park. One half of it was rides and coasters. The other half was a water park. Obviously, the summer jobs there were a great pull when you were a teenager, and they employed a huge number of my friends on summer breaks from college. The jobs over in the water park were generally considered more desirable, although I was never able to get them because I was a horrible swimmer. Basically, the water park opened later and closed earlier, so the shifts were nicer. And they had to pay you more because you had to be first aid and CPR and lifeguard certified. A lot of my friends worked there, and I knew about 3 of the people involved in this story. It started at a water slide, one of the huge tube slides that you had to walk up 7 flights of steps to get to the top. One lifeguard was posted up top, telling people when to go, and one of my friends was the lifeguard at the bottom, who helped people off the slide and gave them all the clear for the next person to go. A family had come with their child, who was very young, and apparently barely the height limit to go on the ride. The family was in line with the father first, kid second, and mother last, so that someone would be with the kid both top and bottom of the slide. The father goes down the slide, gets off, and the lifeguard gives all clear, and waits. He can't see what's going on up top, but finally the next rider comes down. It's the mother, who walks over to the father and asks where the son is. There's a moment of confusion, and my friend is pulled over by the family. The kid had been the next one to enter the slide up top before his mother, but had never come out the bottom. My friend is confused, calls up to the top lifeguard who verifies that the kid went down the slide. Neither my friend nor the father saw the kid come out of the bottom. Until this is figured out, they shut down the ride. The top lifeguard calls security and reports this as a missing child, while my friend calls a supervisor. The supervisor shows up and is apparently afraid that the kid is wedged in the tube somehow, and in such a way that the mother failed to dislodge him coming down the slide. The way she said it, it was apparently obvious that she was assuming some injury to be involved. The parents are obviously upset at this point and freaking out, and the supervisor has the upper lifeguard go down the ride himself, spread out to make sure there's no child jammed into the turns of the ride. He comes out the bottom, having not dislodged the corpse of the child, and everyone is more confused than ever. Meanwhile, security called, saying that they just turned up a missing kid near one of the coasters. Could they get a description of the child missing? The supervisor sort of dismisses it out of hand that it could have been the same child. The coaster they found the kid by was clearly across the park, and the child was only missing for a few minutes at this point. Instead, she has a bunch of lifeguards run up the stairs and come down the slide, still hoping to dislodge the kid, while other employees quietly look around the bottom in case the kid somehow managed to fall out the tube. Meanwhile, upper management is called in as the parents of the kid are alternating between yelling and blaming each other, panicking and threatening to sue the park. Upper management calls security and asks them to pull the security camera footage from the top of the slide to try to figure out what happened. A kid a few years ahead of me in high school happened to be working security, and he was there when they pulled the footage, and one of the security guards says that he is almost positive that's the kid that they have in the next room. They get the kid's name, and sure enough, he's in the missing children's room, safe and sound. Here's where things get weird. The footage shows the father, kid, and mother entering the slide. It's almost time-stamped, so they know where the child went down the slide. The incident report for when the kid was found clear across the park behind a roller coaster shows he was discovered less than 5 minutes later. If you've ever noticed, nothing in an amusement park is laid out linearly. There's always fences and bushes and buildings between you and where you want to go. The idea is to make you ramble about between rides to cut down on ride wait time. My friend, the security guard, tested it, and walking at a staff clip and knowing all the shortcuts, it was a 20-minute walk for him. Furthermore, when you hit the edge of the water park, there were signs that shirts and shoes had to be worn past that point. If you saw anyone, even a kid, walking past there without them, you were to detain them. The kid was found barefoot and shirtless in just his swim trunks. The idea that no one across a 12-acre would stop this kid, who to travel that far had to be running, and ask him to put on appropriate clothing is completely weird. Weirdest of all was that the incident report stated that the child seemed disoriented and was at first not able to respond to questions. It also stated that the kid, who was in a water slide 5 minutes prior, was bone dry. This was just the talk of the park for about a week, with everyone trying to come up with explanations. Guards searching the other security footage to try to find the kid going across the park, people trying to get from the slide to the coaster, etc. Then the upper management came out and basically hushed it up. Supervisors told that if they heard anyone talking about it, they had to be fired. Pretty soon the park moved on to whatever the next drama was, and it all got swept aside. But yeah, child goes down the slide and into time and space portal. My eyesight corrected itself until I realized I wasn't wearing my glasses. For a bit of context, my eyesight is horrible. Even half a foot in front of my face is nothing but blurry color. Yesterday, my mom and brother picked me up to go to an appointment. I was running a little late, so didn't have time to put my contacts in / do my makeup, and was getting ready on the drive. So while my mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat with the mirror down. I took off my glasses to apply my eyeshadow. My brother, who was sitting right behind me, asked me a question, and I turned back to look at him. When I turned my head back around, I quickly finished my eyeshadow and shut the mirror. I was looking out my window at the farmland just off the road and thinking how beautiful it was when I suddenly realized that I hadn't put on my glasses. They were sitting on the dashboard. As soon as I had that realization, my perfect vision went back to just blurred colors. It was an instant, like flipping a switch on my sight. It was so shocking that I yelled, "Holy shit." My outburst startled my mom and my brother. So I told them what had just happened, and they said they believed me, but couldn't think of a rational reason for it. We tried to figure it out for the rest of the drive, but honestly couldn't. To be honest, if there's some secret to magically fixing my eyesight that I accidentally stumbled upon, then I wish I could find it again. Rationally speaking, the brain naturally corrects a lot of things relating to eyesight, just like how everyone's image they perceive is naturally flipped by the brain so it looks normal to us. So it's completely possible that your brain was correcting your eyesight completely by itself for a split second. Just a theory. My 3-year-old insisted I was having a baby and described her perfectly. A few years ago, when my daughter was 3, I decided to go back to school and become a nurse. My husband and I were in no way trying for a baby whatsoever. I was on birth control and we were being very careful. I walked into her preschool one day to find the director and her teachers telling me congratulations with big smiles on their faces. I used to work as a preschool teacher here, so a lot of these people were close friends of mine. I asked them what they're congratulating me for, and they tell me that my daughter announced to everyone that mommy is having a little sister in her tummy. I laughed it off and told them all I was sorry to disappoint them, but that just wasn't true. My daughter and I went home and talked about it. I told her mommy didn't have a baby in her tummy. She just kept pointing at my belly and saying yes you do, as if I was lying to her. A few days later, I wake up to someone touching my belly. My daughter has the bottom of my shirt pulled up with her head resting on my belly while she rubs it gently and says, "Baby sister, what are you doing hiding in there?" It was really sweet and I just assumed she really wanted a little sister. She has never expressed any interest in having a sibling prior to this, and we never discussed it. We had a talk again, and she was upset with me and told me that she had seen her before and she is in there. She told me that her sister looks different than us and had blonde hair and blue eyes with little holes in her cheeks, aka dimples. My daughter, husband, and I have all very dark hair, chocolate brown eyes, and no dimples. I talked to her about wanting a sibling and tell her that when I finish school, we will try again for a little brother or sister. She's frustrated and yells, "I already have a sister." I was expecting my period to start within the next week like clockwork. It didn't though. I took a pregnancy test and just stared at that faint, positive result for what felt like forever. I was completely in shock. I was on birth control, so immediately called my OBGYN and they saw me the next day. It was estimated that I was 4 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I gave birth to a blonde hair, blue-eyed little girl with the sweetest dimples. This experience has blown my mind. Did anyone else experience people disappearing off the face of the earth? Temporarily, of course. I was at a New Year's Eve dinner with my parents, uncles, cousins, a bunch of people. This was in Argentina, so it's summer, and we're all eating outside. It was a big white round table. At some point, I went in the house, don't remember why or how long, maybe to go to the bathroom or get a drink, and when I came out, everyone was gone. Everyone and everything was gone, like no one had ever dined there. I looked around the yard, went back inside the house, open concept, hard to hide a bunch of people, but nothing, not a sound, like no one had ever been there. I don't even think there were crickets. After searching for about 10 minutes, I go to sit inside the house to think, and I hear the toilet flush. My cousin comes out and I tell her that everyone is gone. She looks at me weird and leaves. I'm waiting for her to come back and tell me that I'm crazy, but she doesn't, so I panicked. I mustered the courage to go out, and there's everyone, eating at the table as if nothing happened. I went to my seat and I asked what had happened, where did they go, but everyone looked at me like I had a third eye. After the fact, I kept asking, but no one remembers anything happening that night. I've always thought I might be some kind of crazy, but I was telling a friend last week and she matter-of-factly told me about glitches in the Matrix, and that shit happens all the time. So I already feel a bit better that I may not be losing it. Has anyone had a similar experience? I've had this happen with objects before, but never with people. Friend died in 2003, but now he's alive. In 2003, I learned that a school friend had died. A friend of his girlfriend told me about it. He just died in his sleep at 23 years old. I asked if substances were involved and she said no. She was really sad because they had just gotten engaged. I told myself I would send condolences, but I never did. I remember talking to a mutual friend a few years later and got the sense that it was still a really sensitive subject. A couple years ago, I got a friend request from this guy. I didn't think it was real, so I ignored it. Today, I learned that he's alive. He married the girl he was engaged to, the same one he had died next to. The mutual friend I had spoken to about it now thinks I'm crazy. I just asked him to remember the conversation we had about the death. I know a guy who swears up and down that one of my coworkers died like 10 years ago, and the person is very much alive. The guy who remembers his death has all sorts of details about his death in his memory. Well over a decade back, when I was still working at a convenience store, there was a homeless guy that hovered around the neighborhood. I'll call him Dan. He He was skinny, tweaky, high-pitched voice type of guy, rambled insistently, but actually really nice when he wasn't too deep in a raving mode. Anyways, one day we saw a bunch of police cars down the alley from the store, and a little later one of our regular customers told us they'd found a homeless fellow dead under a trailer. Customer said it was Dan. He was recognized in the area. We were sad. Dan was weird and all, but that was it. Anyways, 6 months later, Dan appeared, wanted some matches. He was telling a story to my manager. I slowly approached him and gave him a suspicious side eye. Finally, I asked him, Dan, are you a zombie? Dan just chuckled, but didn't deny it. After that, we added Zombie King to our list of nicknames for him. There's a guy who died of a drug overdose that was in my friend group. Close enough that I had been to his family's house and gatherings numerous of times. Vacations together, everything. When he died, it was terrible as expected, and I remember very well being upset that I couldn't attend anything due to the living out of state situation at the time. So around 5 years ago, after we moved back, my boyfriend's coworker who grew up in the same county as us is hanging out in my home, and a news article is circulating around about a man who drove under the influence and hit a toddler, and unfortunately that poor baby passed away. The guy's now in jail for life in our area. However, the man who is now in jail for this hideous action is the guy who died many years ago before this. The coworker and myself said at the same time, hey, didn't he die a few years ago? We could not understand how that was possible. I called my close friend since childhood, and she also was in disbelief. She also remembers him dying, and it's being a huge shocker and sad event. Her mom used to date the guy who died's father, so she was also in the major circle of friends around the same time we are remembering his death. Many people I know remember it, some do not. I will never ask his family as they have been through enough, and it's been years since I've been around them. Dude is rightfully where he belongs to this day, but we are left baffled by this mystery, and will probably never understand how a glitch of this importance to certain people even happens. Something happened today, and I don't know who to tell. I was running late for work this morning while my wife was tending to our 1-year-old who was sick with a cold. She asked if I could stop at the Walgreens down the street to get him some cough medicine. I was in a huge rush but didn't want him to go without it, so I headed over there as quickly as I could. My wife and I were on the phone as I was driving and pulling into the parking lot. The street was busy and packed with cars, and as I was walking up to the store, I noticed a woman putting her screaming child into her car just outside the store. My wife was reminding me which medicine to buy as I checked my phone for the time. And that's when it got weird. The second I walked into the store, my phone turned off and the call dropped. The sliding door closed behind me and the entire store was empty. The lighting was different than what I was used to. Fluorescent and cold. There was no one at the front and no one in any of the aisles I could see. I turned around to look outside and there was no cars in the street. Not even the woman who was just there 5 seconds ago. I actually said hello twice, loudly, feeling like this was some sort of horror movie I was in. The entire store was silent, and I go to grab my phone again to film this in case no one believed me, and of course, it won't turn on. I turn the corner down a random aisle, and just like that, there's people there. The lighting is different now, and much warmer. There was even music now. I turn to look at the front, and there's a customer mid-transaction with a checker. My phone starts working again, and my wife is calling me. She tells me it just went silent and said the call failed. I stood there for a minute and realized there was nothing I could do but buy the medicine and go on with my day. I don't know if this was a glitch in the Matrix, odd and coincidental timing, or some weird parallel universe type stuff, but all I know is it was strange as hell, and I didn't really know who to tell this to. Why do you have bruises all over your legs? Years ago, when I was working on a psych ward, one of the residents, a teenager who barely spoke other than to ask the time, approached me and said, "Miss, why do you have bruises all over your legs?" I laughed at the randomness of this question and asked what they meant by it, but they just said nothing, never mind, and walked away. I was wearing pants, so I'm not sure how they could even know if I did have bruises on my legs. When I got home, I checked, and there were none. Over the next week though, they started appearing with no explainable cause. My legs became a patchwork of purple, yellow, and blue. I was assigned to other units for the next several weeks, and the client discharged before I had the chance to talk to them again, but the painful bruises stayed with me for a while, as did the creeps. I had completely forgotten about this incident until I started reading through my old journals recently, and it gave me chills all over again, though it might be worth sharing. Has anyone else had glitches that caused inexplicable pain or injury? A response reads, people with mental illness often seem to have an extraordinary ability to sense things regular people can't, including facts about a person they would have no way of knowing, as well as future events. These sensitivities are random, and they can't intentionally direct them most of the time, and sometimes they involve trivial things, while at times more consequential things. Think of it as a radio receiver picking up on random signals of many stations fading in and out, sometimes simultaneously. The stories as old as humanity of the stereotypical, quirky, different, troubled village sage, fortune teller, shaman who needs a lot of alone time and have sensitivities to pick up on information ordinary folks can't. I believe they have lots of elements of truth to them. This is coming from someone who used to be hardcore science-minded, and over many years of working in medicine, research, and direct mental health client care, have gone through some deep paradigm shifts. Glitch in the Matrix or Paranormal Activity. This literally just happened to me and I'm kind of freaked out by it. I'm sitting in my room watching Netflix, and the next episode is loading. My room has been shut for the last 5 hours. The screen sort of blacks out, loading red circle, and the audio is going. That's when I noticed what looks like a huge crack in my TV in the top right corner. It looks like a huge white fingerprint that held tight and fractured the screen. That wasn't there 10 seconds ago. A moth flies out of nowhere from behind me. My back is against the wall, and my bedroom door is closed. I hear my dog making a choking and growling sound in the hallway. I glimpse the TV, and the middle is a bluish color that fades to black, and the crack is still in the TV. I go out to check my dog. The dog is fine and happy. It comes into my room, and I go to the kitchen to throw out a water bottle. The basement door that is usually closed is open. I closed it. I come back to my room, and the TV is completely black, but also lit. The crack and fingerprint are still there. I go to make my bed, and notice that my closet door is open. I finish making my bed, and the TV turns itself back on, and the full volume is incredibly high. The white fingerprint and crack are gone. I closed the closet door, sat on my bed, and wrote this out. I cannot express how creepy this is. 2 questions. Based on your reaction, I'm guessing this is a new phenomenon for you. Have you purchased / been given anything new recently in the home? Doesn't really matter how small, but particularly if it came from another person, not a store. The second question. Did you move here recently? The response reads, yes, but no. My dog growls at empty space at least 3 times a week, and usually I just roll with it. Dogs be dogs. A few weeks ago, I was meditating when I felt a very bad, heavy presence in the room, so I cleansed the room with sage and cedar, and I removed items from the room that felt heavier and cleansed them in my basement, but this was way out of my comfort zone. Like my TV had a fingerprint and a huge crack in it. The whole right corner was white and black, like a quarter of the TV. And then it was fine? For the last few months, I've been regularly meditating and manifesting to the universe, but I'm always diligent to cleanse the space. I've also been a lot more aura aware the last month, unintentionally, like be doing normal things when I notice lights / shadows around things. As for the second question, no, I've been living here for over a year, and as far as I know, there was nothing unusual when I moved here. Mount Shasta sighting. I've read a lot about paranormal and inexplicable phenomena near Mount Shasta. Drove towards a cafe waiting to turn left when I saw a tall man with a white beard and white flowing robes walk towards the crosswalk. I slowed down expecting him to stop crossing the road, but he didn't seem to be ready to cross. He looked like he was almost floating, not really walking. He had an angelic look, almost seemed to glow. Kid you not, the people around him didn't seem to notice him and were clearly looking like ordinary people. Anyways, I turned left and then turned back to catch a glimpse. He was nowhere to be seen. He wasn't crossing the road. He wasn't on the sidewalk or side road. He had simply vanished. Anyone else had such an experience near Mount Shasta? 3 hours out of Mount Shasta, my boyfriend and I were driving on a back road late at night, and suddenly this skeleton-like thing urgently scampered on all fours across the street in front of us. As we drove by, what looked like an old woman with a completely sunken-in face and long white hair was laying down in the bushes. She was screaming, "Fuck you," and flicking us off with both of her bony white hands. There were no other houses around us, and the nearest business was like 10 miles away or so. I couldn't believe my eyes. I think we saw Skinwalker. I've heard Mount Shasta is a very energy-dense area in the world. I know there's lots of shamanic activities and talks about portals. LOL. Yeah, I regret reading this before bed. And maybe nothing, but yet it creeped me out. I had a dream that I was back in high school, at the beginning of first year. Everything was exactly the same, except I had the memories of my life after high school. In the dream, I told all of my classmates that I was from the future, but no one would believe me. Only one friend, who was very smart, said that time travel is theoretically possible. This is where it gets weird. When I told my friends about it, their jaws dropped. They said back in junior year, I was acting weird one day, asking time travel questions, that I said I come from the future. They also said that I was somehow out of it, that I was there, but at the same time, I kinda wasn't. I saw the shock in their eyes when I told them what I dreamed. They even recounted some of the details in the dream that I didn't tell them. The weirdest thing is that I barely remember that day. I remember some of the stuff that also happened in the dream, but that day is kinda foggy to me. I don't know. My friends may be joking with me, but I have known them for 15 years, and I know their genuine reaction when I see one. Creepiest thing I have ever experienced. If I told you what I saw last night, you would not believe me. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it. Scariest shit I've ever experienced. I can't even talk about it without sounding crazy, so here it goes. I went to a laundry around 2 a.m. with my older son. After we put the laundry in, we went to McDonald's drive-thru to get something to drink. The drive-thru was packed with about 5 or 6 cars ahead of us. I noticed none of the cars were moving forward, and it had been like that for 5 minutes already waiting. So I decided to go around the car in front of me to go to the drive-thru lane. McDonald's has 2 lanes. As I'm pulling around them, I look to their car and see why they are not moving, and I kid you not, both people, driver and passenger, looked dead. Head tilted all the way back, eyes shut, not moving. Dead. I freaked out and tried to pull out of the drive-thru, entirely going around the other cars just to get out of there, and I kid you not, the next car I passed, all the passengers, same thing, also looked dead. Head tilted backwards, eyes shut. I panicked, thinking maybe they were all shot or someone killed them. Also, I could hit the gas and get out of there. I couldn't fathom what had happened or barely speak. I was hyperventilating, so my son called 911 and told them what had happened, and they sent an officer to check. A few minutes later, the cops called us back, said everything was fine at McDonald's. Mind you, my son saw it too. We both saw the cars in front of us, the people that looked dead. The whole thing was terrifying. It literally looked like one of those rapture movies, or the end of the world type stuff. Needless to say, I can't wrap my head around it, or what I saw, or why it happened. I'm so scared over it. I know I'm not crazy because my son saw it too, but it feels crazy to even say it. Anyways, yeah, scariest thing ever. My friend messaged me and said she thinks we experienced a quote-unquote glitch. And this is so new to me. I had never heard of glitches ever happening in my entire life, but I am super freaked out and would love your thoughts because I had severe anxiety and I feel so crazy now. Elevators freak me out. The first time my mom believed me that weird stuff happened to me regularly. First off, I know this is nothing compared to other stories on here, but I chose to share it because why not? Before and after this incident, several other things did and continue to happen to me. Strange things. I just have gotten used to it and have learned to appreciate them. So this was when I was about 8 years old in 2001. My mom, brother, aunt, and grandma had all traveled to Chicago to see Dinosaur Sue. We had been staying in a hotel nearby for about 5 days. It was very upscale, new, and overall very nice. Those entire 5 days, my mom would let me run ahead to the elevator when returning to our room from swimming, getting ice cream, etc., and let me ride up alone, since our room was right to the left of the elevator when you get off, and my grandma would always have the door cracked. So one day, on the way back from the pool, literally just got out, wet hair, suit, towel. I did the same thing, ran ahead and entered the elevator, pressed the button for the 7th floor. There's only one elevator in this hotel, by the way. Once I got to the 7th floor, which I knew by the signs outside the elevator, I went to the second door to the left like I had maybe 20 times before that week. I knocked and knocked. Nothing. I remember becoming weirdly alarmed at this point. Best way I can describe it. Even though I was smart enough to know I could always just return to the lobby or that my mom would be arriving shortly. So while wondering why my grandma wasn't answering the door, I returned a few feet to the elevator and waited for my mom and brother. I saw on the display that the elevator was arriving on the floor 7, the floor I was on, which was clearly written on the sign. I see the light and hear the elevator ding, the door's open, and it's empty. At this point, I just feel something is very off and return to the door, knocking and crying now, getting cold because I'm still very wet from the pool. Finally, after no more than 1 minute, a very old woman answers the door and says, "Dear, I told you already yesterday this is not your room." I had never been there yesterday. She then said, "It'll be fine, I am very sorry, but I am on the phone with my son. Give it a few more minutes, your mother is coming." And freaking closed the door. I was shocked, cause I knew I was cute, and how could anyone close the door on a crying kid who lost their mother, especially a woman who seemed like a caring grandmother type. Almost immediately after she closed the door, the elevator opened and my mom ran out crying and grabbed me. She was saying, "Oh honey, where were you?" I had never been so worried. She then went to open the door. Not our room. She was stunned. The whole time I'm trying to explain I had been there, and my timeline of events had only been about 5 minutes. Her still hugging and holding me. She kinda just went into autopilot and went back into the elevator with me. She pressed 7 again, the doors closed super briefly and then reopened. The elevator didn't move at all. Once the door opened, we both saw my grandmother standing in the second door to the left crying, and then very happy, running to hug us. Apparently, had been missing for 45 minutes. Police were called, every floor had been gone too. They were all still in the process of knocking all the doors, opening even locked vacant rooms. Apparently my mother had decided to once more go and look at the pool to see if I had returned there. Then after seeing it was empty, she took the same only elevator back up to 7. Only this time, out of the multiple other times that day, she found me. And not only that, we were clearly not in the elevator hiding out, as it was the only one, and the police and staff had gone up and down the elevator multiple times looking for me. We still talk about it to this day and can't explain it. My hair was still wet. The police were kinda pissed until the hotel staff pulled up the camera showing me getting on the elevator, but then never getting off. Then what was the creepiest was when my mother got on from the lobby, you see her get on, then 10 minutes passed, and then she gets off floor 7 with me in her arms. They went through all cameras on all floors, which had very clear angles of the elevator on each floor. Nothing. I swear the staff was freaked out, as were the police. They were almost convinced someone had taken me and then became freaked out and left me shortly after. They were stumped as to why my hair was still wet though, but they couldn't refute the cameras, as they were high resolution, working correctly and everything. I've always wanted to call back and see if they still talk about it years later. I just don't want to mess with it because it's not like I even see the event as serving a purpose, you know? I have no clue who the woman was, nor was I ever able to identify her. Because for the investigation, even after they found me, they locked down the hotel and all possible exits and had a perimeter. Chicago does not F around, by the way, with possible abductions. Every guest in the hotel was more than happy to help. Women from the ages 50 on all willingly let police take photos. Not one of them was the woman. This woman had very blue eyes, like very. The only possible connection I can think of was that the woman and I had almost identical eyes. I have kinda a rare color for how dark my hair is. I don't know. Sorry for my long ass post. My daughter and I both witnessed and talked to my husband in our house while he was at work. My husband recently took an overnight job to help us out during COVID. He's only been there about 2 weeks and works evenings/overnights, 9 p.m. through 6 a.m. Last night was so different. He left around 8:15 p.m. Our daughter, age 11, and I decided to make it a movie night. Around 11 p.m., I heard keys at my back door and the usual sounds my husband makes when he comes home. I creep out the kitchen to make sure it was him, and it was. He told me he needed to grab his knee compression sleeve, walks down the hall, says hi to our daughter as he passes the living room and goes upstairs. He came back down, gave me a kiss and left again. We finished our movie and went to bed. In the morning, when he got home, I made a joke commenting about him forgetting his knee sleeve. He was genuinely confused, as I recalled the previous night. Our daughter confirmed everything I said, and he still was acting confused. I pulled up our security motion camera on my phone to show him when he popped in real quick, but there was no footage from the night before, or any other night, of him coming home after he's left for work. My daughter and I both heard him, saw him, and even touched him, but he was never home during that time. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened that night. We seriously have no idea what happened. Something similar to this happened to me years ago. The only other witness was my sister's cat. So here's what happened. It was a weekend afternoon and I was using the bathroom at my house. As I opened the door to leave the bathroom, I saw my sister run by. She ran right in front of me through the hallway, past her cat, and into her room. Her cat, aptly named Salem, who was sitting by the bathroom door, does a double take in her direction and then leaps straight up in the air about 4 feet. As large chunks of her hair pop out, he quickly runs downstairs. Naturally, I'm a bit shocked and I call for my sister. I get no response, so I walk through the hallway and enter her room to find it empty. Then I go downstairs to check on the cat and find my sister, brother, and father watching television. I tell everyone what just happened. I'm not sure anyone believed me, but I bagged the cat hair and saved it. As I reflected on the memory, I realized that I never really saw her face as it ran by. It was just that my sister was the only person in the house that was that size, so I guess I assumed it was her. But whatever it was not my sister. I was still talking to my friend on the phone when she texted me. The line dropped, "Call me back ASAP." So this evening happened on October 7th, 2019 at 5:46 p.m. and I'll briefly try to describe it. I was on my way to running some errands, riding in my car while on the phone with this friend. I remember the weather being super weird, cloudy but hot. I don't really know how to describe it, but it felt like the air had some kind of heaviness to it. While I was on the phone to her, she said a few sentences, to which I replied in agreement. Suddenly, she starts saying the same exact sentences she said about 30 seconds earlier, only in a different tone and pace. It really sounded like she was repeating herself, and not like the actual voice glitched and repeated, which is what made it even creepier. So at this point, everything becomes fuzzy and weird, almost as if I lost the sense of time. In the meantime, I heard my messages ringtone going off a few times through the earpiece, but I decided to check them out later on. So I go on and tell her I'm pretty sure that she already said to me all those things, and the most unsettling thing is that her voice would stop whenever I tried telling her, as if she was actually listening, but would continue on as soon as I'd go silent. Without saying anything regarding the fact that she was repeating herself over and over, it was like talking to someone who was purposely trying not to answer. It felt incredibly odd, especially considering each sentence was slightly different than the previous one, but the meaning kept on being the same. That's when I lost her completely. The line gets cut off and I go check the messages I received earlier. Turns out they were actually from her. 2 of them were missed calls and the last one said I should call her back as soon as I could. I was still actively talking to her while at the same time she was asking me to call her back. Definitely one of the most bizarre things that has ever happened to me. I've had this exact thing happen to me several years ago while on the phone with my girlfriend during a babysitting job. Weird things had happened already in the house earlier on, so I was sitting downstairs and talking to her on the phone while the kids slept. All of a sudden, the voice started to distort and get really scary, so I freaked out and hung up and called back. I apologized and explained what had happened, but she had told me that the call dropped like over 10 minutes before that. I put it out totally out of mind until now, and it's weird to hear it happen to someone else. I get the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. I lost my daughter glitch. Hey, so this just happened and I have an eerie and weird feeling that something is not right. So let me explain the placement of my house. When you come in, there's a little hall, and in front of you, the bathroom. Then you go to the left, and you have a small kitchen, then a door. Then it's my bedroom, but it's so big I turned it into a living room. And right next to my bedroom is my daughter's bedroom. Everything is an L shape. I, 24 years, live alone with my daughter, 2 years old, and our 2 pit bunnies. So I had lunch with my daughter and it started getting cold and dark, so we went into my bedroom and closed the door to the kitchen. She always plays in my bedroom and her bedroom that are directly connected. I was reading some Reddit stories while listening to her, making her casual noises, talking to herself, singing, asking me something, moving toys around, and the basic children noise. Suddenly, the house goes completely silent, and after a few seconds I think that maybe she's being mischievous and doing something that she isn't supposed to like all kids do. So I go check on her since I didn't see her from where I was laying. Let me make it clear that there is no way for her to go outside without opening the creaky door to the kitchen that is right in front of me, and she never tried to do it since the lights in the kitchen are off and she's scared of the dark. So I look everywhere in her bedroom and start calling her name. Nothing. Check in her closet. Nothing. Under her bed, in her little play tent, in her toy chest under my bed, the sofa, my desk, everywhere. Nothing. She is nowhere to be seen. Let's mention, she has never tried to hide and stuff like that. She comes when she is called, so I started to freak out. I knew I didn't hear her leave my bedroom to the kitchen, but I checked anyways. Nothing. The bathroom empty. Now I'm starting to panic. I go inside again and check everything over, and while I'm in her bedroom, I hear crying from outside, and look through my daughter's window to see her outside laying on the ground, only wearing a t-shirt. Not the t-shirt she was previously wearing, but the one of the t-shirts that she has. I ran outside almost falling over, but when I opened the door, silence. She wasn't there. There was no crying. It was silence again. I go outside and check everything and can't find her or any trace of her being there. Defeated, I go back upstairs, ready to call 911, when I go to my bedroom and see her calmly playing with the same blocks in her bedroom she was playing with before. She was wearing her clothes as if it never disappeared. The t-shirt I saw her wearing outside was in her wardrobe and neatly folded. I'm still in shock and sitting, staring at my daughter, feeling that if I blink, she might disappear again. Something told me to slam on the brakes at an unactivated railway crossing. Likely saved my life. Have been reading through this sub for a bit and figured I'd share this little odd occurrence that happened a while ago that probably saved my life. I'll include as much detail as possible. It's a vivid memory we both recall very well. Happened several years ago. I was driving down a rural back road with my brother, driving 90 miles per hour. It's a road I've traveled millions of times. At this one section, there's a railway crossing with lights, bells, and gates. It's a crossing with very poor visibility, hence the lights and gates at a rural crossing. On this particular day, I'm driving my old diesel pickup, a loud old shitbox, music playing, and having a convo with my brother. Coming up to the crossing out of nowhere, mid-conversation, I just interrupt and blurt out, "Hey, I wonder if we'd be able to stop before the crossing if I just hammer the brakes right now." And without a second thought, I just do it. The truck screeches to a stop, several meters from the tracks, right as the train screams by. The crossing never activated, no lights, no bells, no gate. I've stopped at this particular crossing in the past. Crossing is supposed to activate well in advance, and trains do freeway speeds through the area. We looked at each other, wide-eyed, and both of our jaws basically sitting on the floor. My brother goes, "Holy shit, dude. What the hell made you stop?" Neither of us heard or saw anything. To this day, we still don't know what prompted me to spontaneously spit out those words and jam the brakes. But I'm certain we'd either both be dead or severely screwed up if I had kept going. Me and my daughter witnessed something surreal and unexplainable today. For a few weeks before this, while out driving, I observed pedestrians standing at the traffic lights who will reach into their pocket and look at their phone as they're walking across the road when the light goes green. Nothing significant or strange about this, just one of those mundane things you notice while going about your day. Today I was driving with my daughter and we stopped at a red light. At a crossing, there was a man standing there, nothing out of the ordinary. Denim jacket, black cap, glasses, around 6'2". I thought I'd try to weird out my young daughter. She's 5 years old, so I knew I was going to blow her mind. So I said, "See that man? When the walking man goes green and he starts to walk across, he'll reach into his pocket and pull out his phone and start looking at it. Watch and see." As he walks across, he reaches into his pocket, but then immediately takes his hand out and looks and points right at me with his mouth open, smiling, like a gotcha stance. Of course, my daughter found this absolutely hilarious, and I sat there completely mind blown. I must have sat there in silence, looking at him walk across for the next 10 seconds. I drove on and had a look at him as I drove past, and he was smirking/laughing. I've been playing it through my head all day. The windows were up, the radio was on, I wasn't shouting, my voice was not even remotely raised. He must have been about 15 to 20 feet away from me. I can't figure out at all how he could have heard me. It's literally impossible. How did he know I was trying to predict? He'd reach into his pocket for his phone. The only even remote possibility I can think of is that he just had the same observation as me and thought I might be thinking the same thing, so he just went for it. But realistically, what are even the chances of this? My ex's mom passed away and sent us a message on my phone. This is my first post, so bear with me, but after reading many other glitch stories, I wanted to share mine here. In early December 2015, my now ex-boyfriend's mother passed away in the home following surgery and other health problems related to her heart. She was born with a rare condition. Unfortunately, she went into cardiac arrest and we were unable to save her, so the event in and of itself was extremely traumatic and unexpected. A couple of nights later, we decided to go see some friends who wanted to offer their condolences to my ex. Everyone loved his mom. We were all sitting in our friend's living room watching TV, and to be honest, they were really trying to distract us from everything. One friend was just being her goofy self, and I was taking Snapchat videos, and I distinctly remembered taking a video of, let's call her Amy. I saved the video, but when I looked at my screen to watch it, it was not Amy. It was a grainy video with a background that appeared to be outside, and 1,000,000% not in a living room. But on the screen was my ex's mom. She said the words, "I'm okay baby, I'm okay," and multiple other friends saw it on my phone before it disappeared. She looked young and vibrant and has a huge smile on her face. Someone had tossed my phone to another friend across the couch to see, and the video then disappeared. When we watched the original video back immediately after, my ex's mom was gone. It was Amy in the video again, just like I saw it while recording it in the first place. My ex and his mom had a very close relationship, best friends really. So when we saw her on my screen, letting him know she was okay, it was astounding. I saw it first, and everyone noticed I was visibly upset. I could not imagine what went through my ex's mind and heart when he saw it. But to this day, it's something we talk about and something he shares with new friends. Something we simply cannot explain other than her coming through in a glitch to let us know that she was okay. This is something they call instrumental transcommunication, a fancy term for receiving messages from the dead on an electronic device. The most famous ones are EVP recordings, but it's been known to happen through phone calls, emails, texts, TV images, etc. Pretty much any electronic device that can be used to communicate. Is there an explanation for what my child said? It is creeping me out. Last spring, when my son was 3 years old, we drove by a big white church. This church is one that we passed often driving around town. It is also the place of his current preschool, but at that time, he attended a different preschool and had never stepped foot in or talked about the big white church. So we drove by one day and he said, "Oh, there's the church that I eat cereal in." My husband and I looked at each other and said, "What do you mean? We've never been there before." We asked some additional questions, but he didn't really answer. However, he was very adamant about being there and eating cereal. This happened during a very difficult time in our lives. My father-in-law was on hospice and dying of cancer. For weeks, we were up and back to my in-laws' house, this church being along the route. He said it a few more times and then never mentioned it again. Fast forward to today, he currently attends preschool at said church. He has been going since September and we love it. It is Christian though, we aren't very religious. Anyway, I got the monthly newsletter and it mentioned that next month is pajama day, where the kids wear pajamas and eat cereal. I told my son and asked him if he remembered eating cereal there before. He said no, and had no recollection of saying that he did. Is there an explanation for this? It gives me the chills when I think about it. The girl who wasn't. When I was 16, I took an SAT prep class to improve my score and get into a good college. The class was pretty boring, but I met the most interesting girl in the class. She was thin, fairly short, with light brown hair and green eyes. She always wore a green headband, which I thought was cute. Her name was Connie. We hit it off immediately and spent most of the class whispering to each other by side at her desk. I spent about 3 weeks sitting next to her, talking during the class. When the class was over, we exchanged IM handles so we could keep in touch. This was in the early 2000s. About a year passed, and we continued talking online. We got to know each other pretty well, but we lived on completely different sides of the city, and it was quite a drive to visit each other, so being the young teens we were, we never actually got together. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask her out for dinner. I set our date at a restaurant located between the both of us, so we wouldn't have to drive far. The time for our dates rolled around, and I headed to the restaurant to meet her. I walked in and saw her sitting in the booth with 2 older individuals at the side of the establishment. She looked exactly like she did in the class. Thin, light brown hair, green eyes, and she was wearing the signature green headband. I approached her and said hello. I gave her a hug and sat down next to her in the booth. I assumed these 2 older individuals across from her were her parents. Odd, I thought, but maybe they were there to chaperone. I could immediately tell something was wrong. The 2 older individuals looked very confused, surprised, almost bewildered. The look on Connie's face was also one of perplexity. Eventually, she said, "Who are you?" I was shocked. I said, I'm Jason. Remember we set up a date for tonight? I assume these are your parents. It's very nice to meet you." And I reached out my hand to shake her parents' hands. They didn't return my handshake. Instead, they simply looked at their daughter and said, "Oh, did you forget to tell us this, Sarah?" "Sarah?" I said. "You told me your name was Connie." She looked absolutely puzzled and said, "Sorry, you must have me confused with someone else." "Oh, my mistake," I replied, then scratched my head and headed out of the restaurant to my car. I was embarrassed. Maybe she just didn't want to go out with me, I thought. She could have at least just said no instead of leading me to this charade. Defeated and humiliated, I decided to just head home. When I opened the door to my car, I heard a voice behind me say, "Hey, Jason." I turned around, and it was a tall, light blonde-haired woman with a large round face and blue eyes. Do I know you?" I said, "It's me, Connie. We had a date planned, remember?" "Where are you going?" she said. We went inside and had dinner. She was definitely Connie. She remembered all our previous conversations over the past year, but she looked nothing like the girl I met in class. When I asked her why she stopped wearing her green headband, she said she had no recollection of ever wearing or even owning that type of headband. I can't explain it. Guy accused me and my husband of stalking him and then completely vanished. Hi everyone, long-time lurker, first-time poster. My husband and I were walking our dog in a very busy and large urban park. Some background: we had lived in large cities our entire lives and are very used to and accustomed to being surrounded by a lot of different types of people and situations, generally. In short, it takes a lot for something to faze us. We've seen a lot. We were along a busy path in a large city park with a lot of people around, and we had our dog. This man coming walking towards us started making eye contact with both of us almost immediately. He stops next to us and says, "Hey boss, how's it going?" and puts his hand out to shake our hands. We look at him because he's acting like he knows us, so we're a bit embarrassed and trying to remember who he is. We hesitate, and then all of a sudden he says, "Why are you stalking me? I keep seeing you guys. Why are you following me?" and says it once or twice more as we quickly walk away from him. We walk past him and he walks past us going opposite directions. We make it a point to wait exactly 5 seconds. I actually counted to myself 1 through 5 before I looked back to make sure he indeed go away and wasn't following us. My logic was I wanted to ignore him in case he was dangerous and sort of diffuse it. I also wanted to make sure he wasn't following us as he started to get aggressive a bit in his tone. I turned around and he is nowhere to be seen. I mean literally nowhere. I can't exactly describe the area, but it was pretty open, and even if he sprinted in any direction for 5 seconds super fast, you would still have seen him at least somewhere. It was also open and there weren't really trees or things that he could hide behind. I'm sure you may be reading this thinking he was crazy on the streets that can be found in any city, but here's what we find a little bit jarring. Maybe not each thing separately, but put together. Number 1, he was dressed extremely well. Yes, I know those with mental illness and or those living on the street can look quite presentable, and I'm not trying to be rude, but he looked wealthy, like old money wealthy, super preppy and well dressed, about mid-50s, almost awkwardly tall, maybe 6'6". People have screamed at us before on the street and have never looked this put together. Again, not impossible, just a bit odd, honestly. Number 2, he was so sure in his conviction that he knew us and we were stalking him. The look in his eyes were terrifying. I can't exactly describe it, but he seemed just so sure. We have no idea who he was. Number 3, no one looked at what was going on, which by itself wasn't odd. People in my city tend to ignore people shouting and antics all the time without a care in the world, for the better or worse. But when I tell you everyone around didn't even glance at our direction, people may ignore what's going on typically, but they usually walk the other way, not into whatever is going on. Moreover, plenty of dogs within sight didn't even seem to look at this man screaming. Number 4, he had a bizarre, surprising accent. Again, not by itself odd, but adds to the weirdness. I believe it was Russian. Number 5, he vanished. Both me and my husband turned around after 5 seconds and agree he was nowhere to be found, and there was nowhere logically for him to be found. We also realized somewhat after the fact that he also appeared seemingly out of nowhere when he was walking towards us. Anyways, this was odd. It's like he appeared out of nowhere from a different time and was so sure in his conviction to the point that we were both like, was he at the coffee shop we went to earlier? Did we indeed walk the same way to the park? But that doesn't make sense because he was walking towards us. It's really hard to describe over text, but he appeared as quickly as he left, and no one around us seemed even remotely bothered. We've had people on the street chase us, threaten us at knife point, throw bottles at us, and have been called homophobic slurs multiple times, but quite frankly, this was just as freaky if not scarier than all of those, because I can't come up with an explanation, especially for the vanishing. My husband is a completely science guy and believes in absolutely nothing paranormal or anything that isn't evidence-based, and he's sort of my skeptical pulse for things, but I can tell even he was completely thrown off. Grocery store glitch. This happened to me a few years back. I was taking a beach vacation with 3 of my good friends. We got in late one night and went to bed, and in the morning, we had to go pick up some groceries. We weren't drinking on drugs or anything, just to get that out of the way. We came out of our hotel and walked to the corner and asked the man where the nearest grocery store was. He pointed us in the right direction, so we started walking. It wasn't a far walk, only a few blocks. When we got there, we walked through the busy parking lot and up to the store. When we got to the door, the automatic doors didn't open. Then we looked in the window to realize the store was completely empty and run down. We were all really confused, and when we turned around, the parking lot was completely empty. Weeds growing up through it. It had not been used in quite a while. This completely melted our brains. That parking lot was just full of cars, and it seemed like a regular day at the grocery store. We started walking out and looked back at the building to see that it was completely run down. The signs had holes broken through it, etc. There was no way we had walked all the way through the parking lot and up to the storefront without realizing that it was closed down. It was obvious as can be. We walked back looking for the guy who told us about the store, but he was nowhere to be found. We still bring this up and tell people this story all the time. Craziest thing that ever happened to me. I have no clue what it meant or anything, but we passed that grocery store a few more times during the trip, and it was closed down. Pretty sure I slipped in the shower and died. Posted by u/ConcertSufficient966 on August 20th, 2022. I know this story is going to sound weird and crazy, but hear me out. I'm not too familiar with this subreddit, but a friend of mine who's always talking about metaphysics, Twilight Zone, simulation type stuff, loves this sub and keeps telling me to post this. In fact, no doubt he'll read this. Hey Zane, lol. Anyways, here's my story. 2 weeks ago, I was about to get ready for a party at 6. Just before I started getting ready, one of my friends messaged me, super excited because a boy she's had a crush on for the last 4 years finally asked her out, and he was coming with her to the party. While I was texting her back, my younger brother walked into my room and asked if I could give him a drive to his friend's house, which I agreed to do. Then I went to the bathroom to have a shower and do my makeup. So I got in the shower, but when I went to wash my hair, I realized that my conditioner was finished. I was pretty ticked off because I had only bought it a couple days ago beforehand, and it's an expensive brand. My younger sister always uses up my things, so I knew she'd used it all. She'd also trashed the bathroom, leaving water everywhere and her dirty towel on the floor. I was pretty pissed off and was about to get out of the shower in order to tell her off and get some more conditioner. I realized at the last second that she'd kicked the grippy mat we have at the bottom of our shower up the tub, which is super slippery without the grip mat. So as I went to step out, my foot slipped and I fell with my neck down onto the edge of my tub. Time seemed to slow down in my head, and I remember my last thought was, wow, this is how I die? How stupid. But here's the thing. At the moment of impact, I woke up in a start, back in bed. I know it sounds stupid and cheesy like something from a dumb Netflix show, but there's literally no other way to describe what happened. I was laying in bed right before I got up for the shower the first time, but I don't remember falling asleep. And the thing is, I've been a lucid dreamer for the last 5 or so years, and if this was a dream, it was way more vivid than anything I've ever experienced. What weirded me out though was that the exact same friend who texted me in the dream first messaged me after I woke up to tell me that the boy she had a crush on had asked out another girl, and she was pretty bummed out about it and didn't want to go to the party. I was weirded out that there was some similarity between that and the dream, but didn't think too much of it at first. As I went to reply, my younger brother came in to ask me if I could take him to his friend's house. All the blood drained from my face. He just stood in the doorway looking confused and asked me what was wrong. I rushed into the bathroom, feeling like I was about to lose my freaking mind, and went to check the conditioner bottle. I know this sounds completely crazy, but the bottle was finished, just like before, and the grip mat was kicked up. At that point, I went to lie back down in bed and texted my friends to tell them that I wouldn't be able to go to the party. Glitch, or did I die in the previous universe? Posted by u/aggressive_AD_9800 on August 17th, 2022. It's been about a week, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I might have died in another timeline and just jumped to this one. Background. I was driving down PCH, a very long highway up the coast of California, at 8:15 p.m. exactly, and I know this because I called my mom to let her know I was stopping to watch the sun as it was setting because it was breathtaking. As I'm watching the sunset, I hear a car's horn blazing, and I mean it was loud and sounded like it was coming right at me. I turn around and see a car coming straight towards me and my car, and then suddenly I'm sitting on the ground, very confused. A headache is starting to come on, but I wasn't hit. My car wasn't hit either, and I'm still breathing. Obviously freaked out, I get back up and check my phone to call my mom because this is just crazy. And then I noticed it's 8:13 p.m. I checked my phone to see if I actually did call her, but there's no history of it. I shake the nerves off and decide to just get home quickly, thinking maybe that was just foreshadowing in events that I did not want to relive. Once I'm home, my mom asked me why I called her and just hung up. I asked what time I called. She said 8:15 p.m. There's still no history of me calling her on my phone. Am I crazy, or did I just switch timelines? Everything here seems more vibrant and colorful. I can feel more energy here as well. I'm not sure. Any guesses? One notable reply to this post states, I don't know, but it's absolutely happened to me in 2013. With a failed unalive attempt. Woke up in a hospital. After that, everything was different. Things like my mother and sisters saying that my aunts never lived in the house I'd remember her living in, or my friends not remembering things the way that I did. Also, so many things got better in my life almost instantly. I didn't think anything about any of this, or start wondering what the hell had happened to me, up until a lifelong close friend of mine who didn't know anything about my unalive attempt at all, successfully tried to off himself on the exact same day the next year. It was like this timeline had to recreate the event and put somebody in my place. I don't know, coincidentally, I saw that same friend in a grocery store in my dreams last night. You know, this story and others that are similar really remind me of the quantum immortality theory. In short, it's the theory that proposes that we're all immortal and that every time we die, we simply branch off into a different reality, or at least our consciousness does, due to the fact that in one reality, we will always be alive, which is the one that we have to experience, since we're the ones that are living. Something happened to me in my apartment. It happened again when I was hospitalized. Posted by u/Agalegos27 on August 26, 2022. A quick backstory. Weird things have always occurred in my apartment. I posted a few years ago about something that happened with my partner being in an apartment, going to the restroom, and slamming the door angrily, only to have him walk through the front door a few minutes later. You can't escape the bathroom window, there's bars on it, and neighbors would hear the commotion. Also, having things end up in random spots like cell phones on the stove, cabinets wide open, remotes that were next to me a minute ago ending up on the table, etc. Yes, I have a carbon monoxide detector that works, and no, I have no history of mental illness like schizophrenia, nor does my family. I was recently hospitalized this year from surgery that was supposed to be a safe procedure that people heal quickly from. After the surgery, I went through a traumatic experience, but what made my recovery worse was remembering what happened in my apartment a few years earlier. About 3, almost 4 years ago, I had a day off from school, so I was just relaxing at home, watching a movie on Netflix. I went to the bathroom, came back out to the living room, and halfway through, I was pretty much blinded by a bright light, and it stunned me to where I couldn't move at all, just stood there still in my tracks. I heard extremely loud yet muffled voices, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, but like if someone/something else was breathing for me, because my chest was expanding so much, but I know I wasn't inhaling/exhaling. Then I heard a loud voice saying, "Okay, it's going up." Quickly coming to my senses once again, I screamed out loud, "What the f-?" I had to sit down on the couch and just grasp what just happened. It was the middle of the day, so I know I wasn't sleeping, and I know how sleep paralysis feels like. So now years later to after my surgery. It's a few hours afterward, and they give me a small meal, broth and jello to eat. In the middle of eating, I start to feel weird, extremely weak and tingly, and thankfully, there are 2 of my nurses in front of me typing up my notes. I tell them something is wrong. I lay back a bit, then feel my arms droop, and I hear one of them say, "I'm calling it." They lower my bed, and I'm getting weaker and sleepier. I see more hospital staff run in, and one of them asking me, "What are you looking at?" As I look up at the bright lights above my hospital bed. Then I start feeling my throat close up. As I begin freaking out, gasping for air, a nurse starts pumping me with air manually. I start feeling less tingly and breathe better on my own. When I hear someone say, "Okay, it's going up now," the phrase that I had heard before. I was told in the ICU that during surgery, they severed an artery and lost almost 7 pints of blood. I'm grateful I didn't die, but what was that? Was it a premonition, a glitch, etc.? My dog kept going up the stairs after death. Posted by you/Marsoto99 on September 5th, 2022. When I was a kid, I lived in a really tall house. There was a central set of stairs that went 4 stories high that the house was built around. My parents' room was on the 4th floor, while I lived on the 3rd floor, right next to the stairs. My childhood dog, this mutt named Bueller, would climb up the stairs most nights to go to sleep with my parents, while occasionally sleeping with one of my siblings on the floor below me. Anytime Bueller was walking around the house, you could hear the clacks of his paws on the wooden planks. He would never head up the stairs at a constant time either, going from as early as 8 to as late as midnight. Fast forward, it's July 2014. I'm 17 years old, and Bueller had just passed away. The house felt really empty for a while. We had gotten accustomed to his clacks, that it was just odd not hearing them. But they kept on coming for about 2 weeks after his death. I, along with my parents, heard Bueller climb the stairs every night. This sound was unmistakable. I had heard this noise for years on end. It was the same pattern and same rhythm as Bueller in life, except there was no Bueller anymore. There was no weather patterns going on, the house wasn't especially creaky, and we didn't have any other pets than him. It was never at the same time every night either. When it came late July, we stopped hearing Bueller's clacks. I asked my parents if they heard the noises, and they agreed. It had to be Bueller coming up the stairs. I will say, I never went to see what it was, just because I knew definitely what it was. It was Bueller going to sleep with my parents. I fell off a cliff, and when I was rescued, my entire reality was different. Posted on March 1st, 2022. In February 2020, I was snowmobiling for the first time. My boyfriend at the time was driving all day and finally let me drive at the end of the trip. We had been dating for 2 months, and this was our first trip together. I'm going around the last bend, and I accidentally floor the snowmobile instead of pushing the brake. I go flying off a cliff and end up 50 feet down. The snowmobile is on top of me, upside down, still running with the bottom part spinning. My helmet has flown off, and my head is 1 inch from a tree. I am terrified. My boyfriend managed to roll off the back at the last minute and is trying to save me, but the snow is really deep and he's having a hard time getting down the steep cliff. My legs are fully submerged in snow, with the snowmobile on top, and I'm not sure if I'm paralyzed. He calls for help and all of these men run down to save me. When they finally pull me out, I can stand, and it's the happiest moment of my life. I'm not paralyzed. I don't have so much as a scratch on me. Do I have a concussion? Maybe. It's hard to say. The snowmobile also, miraculously, has minimal damage. Only the little plastic windshield part is cracked. In hindsight, this moment is where everything changed for me. But you have to understand, I didn't piece this together and come to this realization until months later. These are the differences. My loving, awesome boyfriend was physically abusive for the first time that night. He blacked out and attacked me, choking me. He was crying the next day, and nothing like this had ever happened before. I thought he was traumatized from the crash and let it go. That was another thing that was different. I would have never let that go before. I come from a loving childhood where my dad was my best friend always. I would have never put up with that before the crash and was shocked that I did. In the old timeline, I was on a low dose of Effexor and Xanax and blood pressure medication. I don't take any medication at all in this timeline. Over the next year, a series of weird things that don't make any sense keep happening to the point that I start to feel suspicious. I all of a sudden have an incurable disease I didn't have before. I'm in pictures I have no idea what the context is. I'm wearing clothes that I don't own anymore. My friends have memories of me I don't share, and I'm getting more and more depressed. My boyfriend keeps on being physically abusive, and I can't get out of it. I have no will to save myself. I just keep thinking, this can't be my life. This isn't my life. It just felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. And I finally look at Reddit and realize that I died in the snowmobile crash, and that this is an alternate timeline I'm in. I start to just agree with my friends when they say, remember when you said that, and remember when you did this? But I have no recollection. My CAT scans are normal at this point after visiting the ER. To be honest, I wasn't the most observant person to begin with. A new couch could be in the living room for days, and I wouldn't notice. So when all the stores and shops are different in one area of town, I don't know if that was always there or new. I finally worked up the nerve to tell my sister, who is surprisingly supportive. She asks, what else is different? There was this song in the other timeline. It was a very popular song by Shania Twain or Sheryl Crow type. Anyone would know it. I sing it to her with the lyrics and tell her we would always used to listen to it growing up, though she has no recollection of it. I type the words into Google. The song doesn't exist here. The longer I'm in this timeline, the more I forget the words and the melody of the old song. Also, there was no iPhone 13 in the other timeline because Steve Jobs was superstitious and it was supposed to go from iPhone 12 to iPhone 14. I notice little glitches like that are stupid and don't matter. How do I feel about it now? I've accepted my new reality. I feel bad for my sister and parents in the old timeline that are dealing with my death in a freak snowmobile accident though, but there's nothing I can do. Trying to find them again would be like trying to walk from Canada to Australia with no map. Impossible and a waste of time. I'm just making my reality the best I can now. It clearly, for some reason, wasn't my time to die. I mean to the point of going into the afterlife, if there is one. So, I should do something important if I can. I was always agnostic before this, but didn't believe in different timelines. I thought movies like The Butterfly Effect and Run Lola Run were dumb concepts. Now, I don't rule out anything ever. I have chosen one of my parents' death 5 minutes before it happened. It is a tragic and strangest story happened 7 years ago. This is the first time I'm sharing it with someone. I haven't shared it even with my own mother. Year 2017, summer. I returned to my home country after 1 year from university abroad. My father picked me up from the airport and we had dinner at home. Everything was as usual as it could be. I went to bed at around 12 p.m. and slept immediately. I woke up around 5 a.m. to pee and went directly to the bathroom, which is in my room, so I didn't step out of my room. We all think different things when peeing, such as the color of the walls or what to eat for breakfast. For this time, out of nowhere, I started thinking that if I were to choose one, would I choose my mother or my father as being dead? Then I thought my sister would be devastated without my mother, and my father cannot handle my sister in her teenage years. I decided that absence of my father would be easier than losing my mother. I finished peeing and just about to get back to my bed. I heard a strong snoring noise. My father was always snoring since my childhood, and sometimes we were having fun with it. However, this time it felt stronger and not natural. The noise had led me to the living room, where I found my father lying on the couch with a little blood on his nose. I tried to wake him up, but he was unconscious. I called 911, woke my mother up, but once we arrived to the hospital, he was passed away. He was 48 years old. Doctors said it was because of a cerebral hemorrhage by high blood pressure. We don't know what time it happened. I am still confused with the situation. I wasn't there for 1 year and had the chance of having one last dinner and conversation with my father. I found him like that and acted with cold blood. I can't imagine the trauma they would have lived through if my mother or sister would have found him lying on the couch. And of course, I still think, why did I think such a thing in the bathroom? And what would have happened if I would have chosen my mother? Thank you for reading and sharing my memory. I quite literally can't believe what happened to me. Hi there, I'm a 39-year-old female, and this occurred I think a little over a year ago. This was a very real event. No drugs, no alcohol. I was in our bathroom, which has a line out of sight out the back window to where my hubby passes by before coming in the door. So I was just doing my hair and looked over to see him outside the window, walking up, switching the Kroger bag to his other hands to grab the keys, etc. Then heard the door and watched him walk by the kitchen. I said, "Hey baby," and he didn't hear me. Not surprising, his hearing isn't the best, but I heard him lay the bags down, then lay his keys and wallet down. So I stuck a clip in the last bit of my hair to do, and started out the bathroom door to go give him his hugs and kisses. Well, there he is. Instantly, when I walked outside the doorway of the bathroom, everything was completely different. All the lights were out, and they had certainly been on a moment prior. Totally weird. I felt shaky and whatnot, but I guess I managed to walk a few steps to look towards the kitchen, only to see that my husband wasn't even there. Then before I even had time to attempt to process what the hell just happened, I saw through our kitchen window his headlights coming down the driveway. It was then I started getting extra weirded out and for sure had to sit down. I remember I propped myself sitting on the edge of the couch arm, and the next part is what freaks me out to the absolute most. I couldn't believe my eyes at all. As I watched him walk across that window, it was like someone had just literally rewound the tape and was replaying it. The exact same motions, the exact same sound, all the way through, including him setting the keys and bags down. The only thing I could think at that point is how crazy I would actually sound if I told anyone this, except told my husband right when he got there. So I just want to know if anyone has any ideas of what happened. I am open to hear about it. It's the single most unbelievable existential type thing that's happened in my life. I will never ever forget it. Thank you to anyone who bothered to read/respond. Boyfriend disappeared mid-conversation. This happened a few months ago, but I'm new to Reddit, so I'm just now finding a place to post about it. It was really weird and I still think about it sometimes. A few months ago, my boyfriend and I were coming home from a trip to visit my family. We live in a small second-floor apartment that overlooks our parking lots. We were unpacking the car, bringing stuff upstairs little by little, and my family had sent us with a lot of food, so one load we brought up all had to be unloaded into the fridge. As I was unloading the food, my boyfriend was standing at the counter, and we were having a full conversation. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it was something you wouldn't just walk away from. Anyways, he's standing there, and as I'm talking, I'm turned around to put something in the fridge, but when I looked back, he was gone. I was confused because again, we were in the middle of a conversation, but I was like, Is he hiding from me? Is he playing a joke? So I started laughing and looking for him around the apartment. After a few minutes, I was like, what the heck is going on? Because he was nowhere to be found. Sometimes he steps onto the patio to smoke, so I opened that door, and well, he wasn't on our patio. I saw him downstairs unloading the car. I was really confused about how he got downstairs so fast and why he left in the middle of our conversation. Well, he came back up a few minutes later and had to knock because apparently the front door was locked and he didn't have his keys. How did the front door get locked with him outside without keys and me not knowing that somehow he left? The front door is in the kitchen I was in. I would have heard the door open and close, but I heard or saw nothing if he'd left. I was also just literally putting something down in the fridge, so I had my back to him for like a split second. How could he possibly get to the door so fast and I didn't see anything? None of it makes sense to me, and when I asked him about it, he had no idea what I was talking about, and no memory of our conversation while I was unloading food. So strange. Picture in my daughter's book has changed. My daughter got a book for Christmas. It's this really sweet little book that plays the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and each page has some sort of artwork on it. The first page has 4 ducks floating down the stream, 3 yellow ducks, and 1 brown duck. The ducks are all facing the same way. Now, this is important. My daughter is 1 year old, so right now she loves counting and repetition. Every time we see the ducks, she points them out, and I count them out loud. I've done this at least 100 times already. I'm not even kidding. She loves this book and won't leave it alone. My husband has also read it to her loads of times, and he saw that she was pointing at the ducks, so he started counting aloud too. I was reading it to her this morning. It's a very short book, only 8 pages, and my husband was watching. Everything was normal until my daughter flipped to the first page again with the ducks, and my husband and I at the same time went, what the fuck? The duck at the back of the line is facing the other way. I shit you not. I've looked at these ducks so many times over the last few days. I've counted them out, God knows how many times, and they were all facing the same way. I would literally bet my life on it. I thought at first I could maybe explain it as an overtired parent gets it wrong. Though honestly, I know this book like the back of my hand, so it seems like a massive stretch. But it's also the fact my husband noticed at the exact same time as me and was weirded out too. We both looked at each other and back at the duck, and we're both in agreement that it's changed. I've read things on this sub before and have always been like, ooh, cool, I wish something like this would happen to me. But now that it has, I feel nervous and also a bit crazy. I'm so glad my husband is in the same position as me though. It confirms I'm not going mad. Edit. Picture of the book in the comments for anybody who wants to have a look at the creepy ass ducks. Edit again. The dreaded picture. I witnessed the emergency scene of a car accident the next day and never happened. No one in my neighborhood recalls it ever happening. I'm really scared. Due to privacy concerns, I cannot disclose my exact location. I live in a rural city in Washington state, and there was a major collision on the road near my house early Wednesday morning last week. I was on my way to work, but got stopped by local deputies directing traffic at the accident scene. I had to call my manager and tell her I would run late due to the backup. Well, I tuned into the local news after work to hear the details, and as it turns out, there was no accident. I understand that a minor crash could escape the local news headlines, but this involved multiple vehicles. I remember seeing 3 ambulances parked next to the police. It was nuts. The following day, I scouted the local news and police Facebook updates to learn more about the large wreck, only to find it empty. I've asked neighbors and local police about it, and they have no recollection of it ever happening. Even worse, a local resident that I was chatting with on the morning of the accident was nowhere to be found today. On my way home this afternoon, I asked a local dog walker near the previous accident scene if he knew the guy I was talking to the previous day. I described the witness from head to toe, so there wasn't any confusion. At first, the dog walker looked at me with a dumbfounded expression, and then his expression changed to one of annoyance, as if he thought I was making a stupid joke. He told me that the guy I had allegedly spoken to had been dead for over a year. I don't know what to make of this. Here's the top reply to this story. Don't rely on the news to know if something really happened. One night in San Francisco, my partner and I watched from our apartment as a car drove on the Caltrain tracks, followed by two unmarked police cars. The driver flees on foot. The train, full of commuters from the South Bay, had to be notified to stop. Helicopters with searchlights looking for the driver, cops and canines everywhere, a lot of city resources being used. Nothing in the news the next day or any after that. It was crazy and we still have no idea what happened, but a ton of people were affected, yet it wasn't newsworthy apparently. Was told my future in a Witherspoon pub in Manchester. This happened years ago, and after some scrolling on here, it reminded me of when I met this really off, weird guy in a pub in Manchester, whose vibes, when I think about it, give me chills to my core. In 2018, I went to go watch Chase and Status at the Academy. Now, beforehand, I went for a meal and some drinks with my ex. Whilst we are having a drink, there's this really strange guy at the bar area near us. And what weirded me out about this guy is I had a close friend pass away from a drug overdose a few months prior at the age of 19. But this random fella's vibe just gave me a really similar feeling to my friend, even though the man was a lot older. As we're in the pub and drinks are flowing, I get speaking to this fella and he seems nice enough, and he mentions I'm a clairvoyant, asking, do you want me to tell you your future? I hate stuff like this and it weirds me out. I don't want no bad news or worrying about something before it happens. My partner at the time wanted to hear what he had to say though, so he told me my future. At the time it annoyed me because she's the one who asked why am I getting the rundown. So he told me, all of this happened by the way, that I'm going to fuck up and lose my girlfriend, which we didn't want to hear before I'm trying to go to a rave with her. He then said I'm going to get into a fight and lose my front teeth, and I'm going to get stabbed, and all these things will happen within 3 months. My partner at the time shrugged it off and just told me not to listen to him. He's a loon. Now, after dropping these bombshells on me, he casually eats 3 Xanax in front of me and gave me this weird as fuck familiar smile, downs his drink, and just walks off. The friend who passed away, Xanax, was involved, and I can't explain it. I know I sound crazy, but I just feel so weirded out by the interaction. Lo and behold, the most specific events he told me were going to happen did happen, and happened all within 3 months of each other, exactly how he said it. I've literally just asked my ex if she remembered the encounter, because it was one of the most strange of my life. Guy disappeared in front of my coworker and I. About 2 years ago, I was working at a dispensary with another girl. It was slow at the time, so we were standing near the counter chatting, and both happened to be looking out the window when we both witnessed a man walking down the sidewalk and then behind a tree, a quite skinny tree, and completely vanished. Where our viewpoint was, we would have been able to see where he went, regardless of the direction. We both saw the same thing and were freaked out, and continue to bring it up during the course of our working together. I have thought about this last 2 years and can't wrap my head around what we saw. A reply. Myself and 2 of my children saw something similar. As we approached an intersection, we saw a child, 4 or 5 years old, running up the other side of the road, but running like he was hiding from someone, ducking and diving, and on the last dive down behind a car, he never came back up again. We thought it was funny and looked for the owner, lol, but there was no adults nearby. This concerned all of us because it was a busy road with no adults. The child could have been run over by a car very easily. I took the corner and parked up just to make sure that the child was okay, or to see if he was lost maybe. My son got out and walked up and down the oath that the child was running on, but still nothing. Weirdest 2 minutes of our lives. The 3 of us saw him, and we saw how he just vanished in a flash. There's nowhere to run to on that street. It's a straight road, so if running ahead, you'll just be seen. It's just bizarre. I just found my sister's missing necklace. It's impossible that it would be here though. My sister moved multiple states away 3 years ago. Her husband gives her very thoughtful jewelry pieces every Mother's Day. They're always extremely sentimental and bespoke to convey a specific sentiment or memory. 2 years ago, he gave her a gold necklace with a heart, carved inside with their family's initials and a year of birth, with diamonds to the center where the heart meets a point, because it's their daughter's birthstone. Since being given that gift, she's never left the States to visit home. She's also never been to my current house even before leaving. I also live pretty far away from home and my family hasn't made the visits, but I've lived here 7 years now and haven't moved or spent long visits with my family, just daytime drop-ins. My sister's necklace went missing sometime in spring last year. She thought it may have broken and fallen off while out and about, and she was very distressed about it because it was an expensive gift and felt horrible about it going missing. When we chatted about it, she actually told me she wasn't going to tell her husband about it until she's searched everywhere possible, the entire house, the car, her workplace. She even called the stores she's shopped at regularly asking if it was found and turned in, but nothing. Just this week, I was pulling out old clothes and shoes to donate. My son went through a growth spurt and I got wider, and I figured it was time to clean the house. I was pulling out all the shoes and purses at the bottom of my closet, and there in the very back of my closet, I found my sister's necklace. There's absolutely no way that this could have ended up here. My sister hasn't come over to visit, and there's no way this would have ended up in our state, in my house, without her having mailed it personally, and she's never mailed me anything besides sending gifts directly from the seller that she'd never had personally touched. And it's not as though it's a similar looking piece or a mass-produced item. This was specifically carved with their birth years and initials, and their daughter's diamond birthstone. But it gets even more strange. I immediately FaceTime her when I find it. I was already trying to figure out how on earth it would have come to be in my closet. I haven't gone to her state yet. My son hasn't visited there. Our parents had, but they went before she had even gotten the gift. When she picked up and I showed her what I had found, I was honestly bracing myself because I was sure she was going to be just as confused and have a million questions I couldn't answer. But then I showed her that I found it, and she set the phone down to put herself in a full view and pulled out her necklace from under her blouse. She had her necklace. Not just that, she had no recollection of losing it, no memory at all, talking to me about losing it, searching her house, or calling shops. In fact, she was sure she's always had it in her jewelry box and thought I was being weird about finding the same one, because it's likely a really common necklace. When I pointed out that it had their same initials and birth years carved into it, she just shrugged and said it was a coincidence, but not all that strange. When I pressed it, she laughed and assumed that I was pulling a prank of some kind, which is extremely out of my character. I'm not one to pull pranks, and asked if I had made it as some kind of joke. I'm at a total loss here. I feel like reality is all jumbled up and I'm the only one who noticed it's off. I was so confused, so I called our mom and told her what had happened. I told her the whole thing, asking if she recalled her losing the necklace. I was sure if she did it, it would have come up in their calls as well. She didn't recall anything, but the way she acted in the call was even more strange. She says, "Well, these things happen. Don't let it drive you crazy. Our family is just sensitive to these things," and then wouldn't elaborate on it, which is very unlike her character. My boyfriend understood Japanese for a minute. Short, but it has been weirding me out since it happened, and I thought maybe it belonged here. A couple of nights ago, my boyfriend and I were sitting in our living room watching One Piece. My boyfriend gets up to grab a snack from the kitchen, while we let the episode keep playing. Our kitchen and living room are separated by a thin wall, as the kitchen leads to the living room, so he could still hear the episode well in case any action picked up. Well, one character says something along the lines of, "Why do you care about this woman anyways? She's a criminal." Mind you, we were watching subbed, so all this is in Japanese. I'm reading subtitles, but my boyfriend can't at the moment. But after the character asked that question, my boyfriend from the kitchen yells, "Because she's my friend, dumbass." I pause the episode immediately and walk into the kitchen and ask how my boyfriend knew what they were saying. He got this look of realization followed by confusion and horror on his face. His exact response was, "I don't know, I just don't know." He's never spoken another language other than English, never taken any Japanese classes, never even downloaded Duolingo. We are both just creeped out by it. ETA. I don't believe he watched the episode without me, as we don't care if each other is a couple of episodes ahead sometimes. He will usually tell me when he does, like, "Hey, I watched these episodes while you were asleep, so I know what happens," but he claims he didn't watch ahead this time. The top reply reads, "One time I clicked a link that led me to a website based in France. I didn't realize at first that it wasn't English and was reading the website just fine. Suddenly, I realized it was in another language and couldn't read the website anymore. I had been taking intro Spanish at the time, so I'm sure some of the words were similar, but it was still a strange experience." 29 years ago, I jumped to a parallel existence after a near-death experience. Let me start by saying this will be long. My heart is already beating fast telling the story. Only those closest to me know that this happened until now. When I was 25 years old, I was driving home from work one night. I lived in Los Angeles at the time. I was driving on Sunset Boulevard, heading west towards my apartment in Brentwood. For those that are not familiar with the area, there is an expanse of Sunset near UCLA that is very curvy. It is 2 lanes on either side with no shoulder. It was 8:30 on a Saturday night, so there was some traffic. I was driving along, and all of a sudden, about 50 feet in front of me, I saw a car, but I was looking at the passenger door. A car had spun out of control and was perpendicular in my lane. I didn't have time to stop. I looked to my right and saw that there was a car next to me, so I had nowhere to go. I instinctively turned my car all the way to the right anyway. Once I had cleared the first car, I spun it all the way to the left, still trying to avoid the second car. While all of this was happening, I remembered a time with my mom at Disney World when I was 3 years old. This is not a memory I had ever had. I vaguely remember parts of that trip, but this memory was not one of them. I realized that my life was flashing before me and I was going to die. I had never been so sure of anything. Every part of me knew I was about to die. I started screaming. To this day, I don't know if I vocalized anything or it was all in my head. I yelled, no, this isn't fair. I'm not done yet. All the while swerving all over Sunset Boulevard. I suddenly stopped my car and I was now perpendicular in the opposing lane of traffic. I looked around and there was not a single car anywhere. It was like everything had been wiped clean. I put my car in reverse and proceeded home. I did not see a single car the rest of the way. I was only 5 minutes away from home at that point, but Sunset Boulevard on a Saturday night was completely empty. I got to my apartment and parked on the street. I didn't see one person. While walking to my apartment, I came to the conclusion that I had died, and because I said no, I was stuck in some sort of limbo. I had never wanted my roommate to be home so badly. Unfortunately, she wasn't. I called one of my best friends and said, "I need to ask you some questions. Please just answer me and I'll explain it after." I asked her my name, my age, what city we lived in, and the date. Obviously, she was very alarmed. I explained that I thought I was dead and I wasn't sure I was really on the phone with her. She tried to convince me that I was alive and that everything was okay. There was no way mathematically to escape it. There was nowhere for the car on the right to go. This moment has haunted me my whole life. There have been times when I have questioned my existence. I've wondered if my life since has been a very detailed death trip, and I'm actually lying on Sunset Boulevard bleeding out. After many years of meditation, spiritual practice, and a belief in quantum physics, I wonder what life I jumped into. My mom saw my wedding picture on my phone as my lock screen. I'm 18 and never been married. My mom was sitting on the couch tonight and I was standing next to her to the right with my phone on the armrest. I clicked open my phone to show her something and quickly typed in my passcode. With the phone still on the armrest, she very casually said, "That's your wedding picture," and pointed to the screen. I asked her what she meant and she said, "Your lock screen, that's your wedding picture." My lock screen picture is just a picture of some palm trees from my trip to California. My home screen is also just a different picture of trees. I flipped through all of my tabs and there were no photos open that could have even remotely resembled a wedding picture. When I showed her my lock screen again, the picture of the palm trees appeared. She seemed a bit shocked and said it was weird. She just said, "I saw someone in a wedding dress," after I questioned her another 10 times about it, and eventually dropped it. When she initially said it, I felt like I saw it too. It was the weirdest thing. I feel like I saw it, but it instantly left my memory, and I couldn't remember what the picture even looked like. I believe her that she saw it. Could this be a glitch that showed me my future? Edit. Here's a picture of my lock screen. Edit 2. My mom is in her 40s and very mentally sharp. Never had any symptoms of dementia or anything of the sort. I fully feel that I saw the picture too, but the memory of its contents was instantly wiped. Another reason I disagree with the suggestion of my mom displaying signs of dementia, it was a very eerie feeling. I even remember telling my mom multiple times I saw it too. My memory of the entire interaction is very foggy though. Very weird considering it happened less than 24 hours ago. The craziest thing just happened to me. Woke up around 3 a.m. from an annoying lamplight in my sister's house, filmed on iPhone X. No other light sources were turned on in the room, and this is not a reflection. That was so surreal and weird. Here's the video. Edit number 1. Some people are asking for recent pics of the room, so I uploaded them here. Edit number 2. Second night, 12:05 a.m. So far nothing, both lamps, real and the mirror one, are off. Checked the curtains and there was no way the light from the windows could somehow reflect through to this mirror. Still have no idea how this could happen yesterday. Edit number 3, 1:05 a.m. Still nothing. Also, please stop saying you saw some ghost in the video. I am scared as hell already, so I have just convinced myself you all talk about moving chairs lower part. Hahaha. Edit number 4, 2:17 a.m. No sign of anything similar to the yesterday light in the mirror. Everything looks normal. I'm really tired. I haven't slept since yesterday, so I'm just going to turn on all the lights everywhere. Yes, I'm that scared to sleep without lights on now, and go to sleep. Gonna try to re-upload original and today's video in higher quality sometime tomorrow. Edit number 6. Oh wow, RIP inbox. Sorry for not further updating the post. I am alive and well, just was really busy with work and personal stuff. I see that the thread is now locked, so I will try to bring you an update with a source quality video and my next posts in a couple of days. I met me from the future and I can't stop thinking about it. This is a story that haunts me daily. This happened in 1992. I had just graduated high school and was working in a warehouse. I kinda enjoyed it and settled thinking I will probably retire here. Yup, I had zero ambition. I was a sad, lazy, cringe-inducing shitbag. A new guy started. It's a warehouse with high turnover, so nothing unusual about new guys, and everyone asked if we were related because we looked alike. He was probably late 30s, early 40s, and I was 18 at the time, and he was fatter. He seemed to carry himself like me, the way he walked and spoke. His second day, we worked together on a wrapping station, and the first thing he said to me was, "You still have that Penthouse magazine under your mattress?" I did. Weird but totally normal for teen boys, I suppose. He then said, "I know everything about you. You're worried about never getting a girlfriend." I was floored, but I again thought it was a usual teenage thing. I mean, I wasn't the best looking guy, so I guess it wasn't a stretch to guess. Probably the start of bullying and the end of my job, as one thing I liked most about myself is that I have no problems fighting anyone, anywhere, anytime. No matter how big or how many, I was always down. I never won, but could take a beating and the person usually quit and never messed with me again. I asked him why he was saying all this shit, and he looked at me and his expression is seared into my mind and left an image I see daily. He said, "I am you." He then went on to tell me everything about myself. I mean, my deepest, darkest secrets that no one knows. Then he kept telling me more about myself. Then we went to lunch and were outside smoking. And yep, same brand, Camel White regulars. Hard to find where I live, so I never seen anyone else smoke them. I asked him to be serious and how he knew all this shit. He said, "I already told you, Tom Thok." Tom Thok is a nickname only one person called me, and he was my dad's friend I barely saw. A crappy Jetta pulled into the parking lot, and he said, "That's our girl. She is a demon who is horrible to us." I asked him why he is with her, and he said she is the best we could do. When she got out, she was disgusting looking. I mean, trailer trash would be too kind, and she waddled her ass over to us. She said, "Let's go." Before he left, he stared right into my soul and said, "We deserve better. Please go to college and stop being lazy and make something out of yourself." Trailer Park Girl just kinda laughed like, "Yeah, right." He lived with her, and I never saw him again. I think I ran into a younger version of her at a friend's house years later, and he introduced me and said we should hook up. I said no. I went to college and stopped being a pathetic, lazy cringe fist. I accomplished everything I set out to do, as I always felt the need to not let him down. I know none of this makes sense. How can I explain something that I can barely understand myself? None of it makes sense whatsoever. Like, why would a future me get a job with me? He had to fill out a job application and have his references checked, right? Yes, I asked my manager, who was a piece of shit, who just told me to mind my own damn business and to focus on my job and try to be less of a screw up. Has anyone had something like this happen to them? It's haunted me daily since. I am 48 years old and have not seen any time travel machines. Help me out here, maybe end this once and for all. Please tell me your experience. I apologize for any grammar or anything like that, but I don't want to go over this anymore than I have to, as I usually get really depressed when I think about this. I bought my daughter the Stephen King book, Everything's Eventual, for Christmas. She came into town and we had her Christmas early. She took her book with her when she left. I had told her I wanted to read it when she was done. She came home the other day and put her suitcase in her room. I got home from work this morning at around 7:30. The book was on the foot of my bed. I was like, oh, she must have finished it. I read a few pages, then went to sleep. When I woke up this evening, I had asked her if she liked the book. She said she hadn't read it yet. I told her I saw she put it on my bed, so I figured she was done. She didn't put it on my bed. She left it in her suitcase. She hadn't been back in the house after I left until 1 p.m. that day. Someone really wants me to read that book. A customer called me from the future today. I'm a sales manager at a very well-known auto parts store. Our store is kind of on the smaller side, so we typically only have 2 people working at a time. We sometimes order parts directly from our vendors for customers if they're for rare or classic cars, and thus something we don't need to stock. When the parts come in, we call the customer to let them know they're ready for pickup. Today we received a call from one of our regulars. I answer and he says, hey, I see I just missed 2 calls back to back from you guys. Are my parts in? I let him know we haven't received our truck yet, and neither me or my coworker have made a call all day. I even checked the recent calls and verify no outgoing calls have been made since yesterday evening. He informs me he's on his cell phone and looking at the 2 missed calls in his log as we speak. We talk about how weird it is and hang up. Within 5 minutes, his parts show up. I go to call him back, and after the first ring, accidentally end the call. I immediately hit redial, and as soon as the phone begins ringing, it dawns on me that I've just called him twice back to back. He didn't answer, and I'm still wondering what happened. Please help. I've switched dimensions and I need to go back. Sorry for the formatting, I'm on mobile. I'm 24 and I'm positive I've jumped to another dimension. I'm not trolling, I'm not joking, I'm dead serious and I need help. I'm new to all of this and I didn't do this on purpose. So it starts with my little sister's boyfriend. My family swears we knew him before he and her were dating. He has tons of memories with me, but I didn't know him until she brought him home one day. I have no memory of him whatsoever. It bothered me, but I brushed it off. Then my friend Cheyenne was telling me about this time she hung out with me and my friend Ashley, how we made cheesecakes, sang karaoke, and tons of other things. I thought she was joking because I have no memories of it at all. None. But I called Ashley, and she remembers it and is confused as to why I don't. And I feel like I'd remember that because Cheyenne and Ashley aren't friends, like different social circles. They only met because of me. So why wouldn't I remember us all hanging out? Next, I was talking to my friend Carrie, and I asked her why our friend from high school got divorced. She told me our friend Nicole was never married. She lived with the guy, but I know Nicole married the guy because she invited me to the wedding and I couldn't get off work to go and I felt bad. I remember where they got married. I remember her dress, I remember the cake and how it looked like. I remember the pictures of it and everything, but it never happened apparently. But I remember it happening. I remember seeing the pictures on Facebook and I went back to look, but they weren't there. And finally, my relationship with my boyfriend has always been amazing. We have our moments like any other couple, but nothing major. We've always had a good relationship, but it all changed all of a sudden. Literally, I woke up one day and everything was different. He's very hateful, very rude, and not affectionate at all. He's always been affectionate with me, but now he barely even gives me attention, and this just isn't normal for us. Those are the major things, but there's smaller things too, like lyrics to songs being slightly different when I know that it's wrong, especially songs that I love and listen to all the time. They're slightly different now. I do have anxiety and borderline personality disorder, full disclosure, but I've always been able to manage them, and I've never experienced something like this before. I don't think it's mental illness. I just don't know what to do, and I don't like it here. Any help, advice, anything is greatly appreciated. Something weird and unexplainable happened at my friend's house. This is the first glitch I've experienced. So I was at my friend's house the other day, and we got some drinks from the kitchen and then went up to his room to play some video games. He put his glass of water on his bookshelf and then turned around to shut his door. In doing so, he knocked over the full glass of water and it went all over the floor. My friend was pretty pissed, as it got over quite a few of his books as well. So we went downstairs to get some kitchen towels and came back up like 30 seconds later. When we opened his door, we noticed that the wet patch on the floor was gone, so we felt it, and it was bone dry. His books that got wet were dry too, and we couldn't find the glass that we'd left on the floor either. It was then when we looked up and saw a full glass of water sitting on the bookshelf. No one could have put it there, as we were home alone at the time. I have discovered an actual NPC. I've been on a bit of a binge on these stories, and it made me wonder if I have experienced anything like this, and I thought back and realized I have. Although not as freaky or crazy as most, I'm quite a skeptical person, but this always has me at a loss. My girlfriend's family lives a little ways away from me, and so often I'll drive us over to visit them. Without fail, and I mean every time, when we leave back home, and for some reason only when we leave the town to head back home, this man is out walking his dog at the exact same position. Now, sure, it could of course just be his routine, and I'm just having a time coincidence, right? Nah, we're talking it could be 3 p.m. or it could be 11 p.m. and he's always cutting the corner exactly when we pass, as if he's spawning in. It's so odd. It's like seeing its replay over and over and over again. It's always so consistent. We always mention it on the way back and check, and without a doubt, he's there. I play a lot of video games, and I swear to you, if this was happening in a game, I'd be complaining about the lack of NPC variation. LMAO. One of these days, I'm going to just be brave and pull over and just politely ask how frequently he walks his dog. Who knows, maybe he's thinking, damn, every time I be walking my dog, that white car passes. Edit. Wow, didn't expect this to blow up so much. I'll edit again and update if anything wild happens or if it continues. Thanks for all the pleasant responses. Something happened to me, and I am now severely depressed and confused. To cut the long story short, I had been asleep for 3 days due to a head injury that I sustained in home. In those 3 days, I have lived to be 21 years old. It's very difficult to explain, but here's how it goes. I was a Caucasian Filipino boy living in Manila. I had 2 siblings and had a single mother. I was also an athlete. I was a scholar in college due to the fact that I was a great one. My sport was track and field. Everything seemed so real. I had family members who loved me and would tell me stories of how I was a child, how they would talk to me in my mother's womb. I remember speaking to them in the Filipino language, and now I cannot even understand what those words mean. I would also browse Reddit in my free time. What gives me the chills is that I have also subscribed to this exact thread, and in my time in the Philippines, the year and the date is the same as it is now. It is only delayed for a day, because I am now back to being a 29-year-old Mexican boy. I also had a girlfriend, my first girlfriend, and I was madly in love with her. I remember courting her and eating at malls with her in Manila. What is also driving me crazy is when I searched online for the malls that we've been to. It all exists, even the restaurants. I remember losing my virginity to her and going to places with her. I also remember having fights with my brother, fights with strangers when I go to clubs. The pain is very real, and I had 4 buddies who would always smoke weed with me. I graduated in high school and I had a pig cat. Everything was fucking real. I also had dreams, and I talked to my friends about death and if God existed. We were Catholic, and it was a very conservative country. Everything was real, until one time I was drinking with my buddies at a bar when we got into a fight. There was this dude who hit me in the head, and everything went dark. I woke up with a very painful neck and the most painful headache I had ever felt. I was in the hospital. The first person I saw was my sister and my cousin. They told me that I was unconscious for 3 days. During the time, I was having a panic attack because I was so confused and terrified and was thinking if it was because of the medicines inside my body or whatnot. I was just discharged 4 days ago, and I am now having suicidal thoughts. I cannot tell reality from fiction anymore. I want to tell my family about it, but I don't think they're the type to believe and would generally disregard it. I do not know what to do, and I don't know what happened. There is more that I want to say, but I can't really put everything into words. Everything was real, and now everything is real again. Where is my kid? I have 4 kids. I know I have 4 kids, but recently I just feel like there should be another one, but it's missing. When we go out, I head count and get flustered because I can't find the extra one. I have to consciously remind myself that there are only 4, but my heart just doesn't believe it. Well, I just put it down as one of those weird feelings and push it aside. Then my parents sent money to my kids. They sent $500. I called them and asked why they sent me so much. They were confused and said that they told me they were sending $100 per kid. I reminded them that I only have 4 kids. They went silent for a moment, then just kind of laughed and said that they were getting old because they were thinking that there was 5. Then tonight my daughter walked into the lounge room. She looked around. I know we're all here, but our family feels small. My son agreed. I hadn't said anything to anyone about my feelings lately because they already think I'm ancient and forgetful at 40 years old. Thanks for reading if you've made it this far. Does anyone else ever have these feelings? As a child, I might have predicted my year of death. It happens to be 2020. I'm 34 years old now, and this story goes back to the year 2005 when I was looking through an old photo album together with my now ex-girlfriend. My mother made a photo album exclusively with pictures of me from birth until approximately 2004, so it was a good occasion to show her my early years. As we came to the last blank page of the album, we found the year dates 1985 through 2020, written in child handwriting, obviously. I'd say no older than 8 or 9 years old. Of course, I immediately recognized my writing style, and we were both spooked as hell because my year of birth is 1985. Back then in 2005, I was obsessed with a band called The Network and their album Money Money 2020, which gave me some extra chills, so I didn't know what to say. It was absolutely surreal. We instantly closed the photo album and never talked about it again, but of course, I never really forgot what I've seen there. I even eradicated the 2020 a few weeks or months later in the album and replaced it with an acceptable date of death, but the year 2020 was already stuck in my head. I learned to live with the thought, although it came back on New Year's Eve 2019 to 2020 when I was facing the fateful year. I was pretty confident that I would make it through the year without harm, and bam, coronavirus pandemic strikes us. Unfortunately, I have a heart condition that might not be too good when catching the virus, and now I'm completely freaked out that I won't make it through the year. Anyone with ideas or similar experiences? Edit. As there are lots of DMs and requests, I'm still very much alive and doing well. 28/12/2021. Thanks for asking. The strangest thing happened yesterday. Insane. Yesterday, I decided to drive to the mall. The one I go to is massive. It's circular. You can drive around it. It has a massive car park on one side, so all seems normal on my way to the mall with my girlfriend, who is still in shock as I am, to be honest. We haven't really spoken about it since. So as we get there, it looks really quiet. There's about 10 cars there, so I'm questioning whether or not it's open, which is really weird. So we drive around the other side just to see what is going on, and there's a few people about and a few cars, but nothing. So we decided to go around back to the first side where we normally park, and our plan is to walk to the entrance and see what's up. This is where it gets weird. As we pull up around the other side, the whole car park is full. There's literally people walking about everywhere. People sat outside having coffee. There was even 2 ambulances. So very, very weird. Me and my girlfriend were unbelievably shocked. We were speechless. We literally sat in the car for about 10 minutes, just trying to wrap our heads around it, and I haven't felt right since, to be honest. The time difference for driving around was about 2 minutes. It would have been physically impossible for all them cars and people to get there, and for it to be empty beforehand. What happened? I would love to hear your thoughts. It might help me feel like I'm not going crazy. Edit. Thanks for the responses, guys. Honestly, there are 2 questions you guys are asking me here that I need to address, I think. You guys are asking if I'm sure I went to the same car park. I have been going to the same place for years. It's a very basic layout. Imagine a football stadium, but bigger. On either side, 2 outdoor car parks, 2 entrances, and at the top and bottom, 2 main roads. I'm 1000% sure it was the same car park. Number 2, you're saying I should have filmed it and drove around again. I didn't even think about that, to be honest. I just sat there not really understanding what happened. Even now I'm still questioning myself, etc. The last thing I wanted to do was drive around the other way and see what would happen then. Missing 4 hours and ended up on a military base. I was encouraged to share my story here after making a TikTok about the event. About 20 years ago, my best friend and myself went to Ridgecrest, California for a party. The party ended up being a 50th wedding anniversary, and we were improperly dressed for it. We ate at the banquet hall, left to the home of my friend's cousin. We left a short time later, headed back to Bakersfield. I was sitting in the driver's seat, she was in the passenger seat, and we began to enter the freeway on-ramp. That was the last memory either of us had until 4 hours later. I kind of woke up, but I didn't feel like I was sleeping. I more or less became aware of our surroundings and that I was in the passenger seat. I looked over at my friend and her eyes were staring into the dark distance. Quickly I realized we had somehow ended up on a dirt road. I yelled her name. She kind of snapped back to reality. There was a chain link fence along the driver's side of the car with barbed wires atop. The road was graded, but the surrounding field was not. For some reason, we were going 30 or 40 miles per hour down the dirt road, and we started freaking out. Almost immediately, we drove right up to a white sign, about 20 by 30. It had the large red and black letters. The top portion read, "Warning." The bottom, "Active landmine field." I screamed for us to turn around, and my friend hit a U-turn in the dirt as we both screamed at the top of our lungs. By this point, we are both in a full panic. We have no idea where we are, how this happened, where we are going, but we are moving. She's driving 50 to 60 miles per hour in the Tahoe, heading the opposite direction. We traveled maybe 2 minutes max. Suddenly, we see lights from every direction approaching just as fast as we are running, if not faster. When they got within 100 yards or so, they turned on their sirens and we realized it was police. Military police. We had somehow ended up deep inside of a military base. They came driving through ungraded desert to stop us. We were removed from the vehicle. 2 20-something girls in party clothes sobbing. The MPs asked us how we got there. They asked what gate we had come in. They kept us in the desert for hours. My friend was put in the back of an MP car for a good portion of it, while I sat in the dirt, leaned against the fence. They ran our names and discovered my friend had someone write something bad on her account a few counties away, but nothing else. We were questioned, and finally, after 4 hours, we were released. They escorted us out of a gate. We realized we were now on the north side of the city when we had left originally from her cousins on the south side of Ridgecrest. We went home, told maybe 5 or 6 people who all either assumed we were crazy or straight up lying. We stopped telling it until recently I told my fiance. Then I made a TikTok which way more people watched than I expected, and here I am. We were not on any type of psychedelic drugs. We both shared the same memory, including the time lapse. If I was alone in the car, I would have thought it was a dream. It was the scariest experience of my life. I would have posted this from a throwaway account, but you need karma credit to post here.